My Chemical Romance has been my favorite band for years. In my opinion, The Black Parade is the greatest album ever made, and this year, MCR began an extensive tour bringing the fictional alter ego of The Black Parade back from the dead, playing the album in full once more. I was fortunate enough to go to the Philly show, my third time seeing them, and honestly, this was maybe the perfect MCR show I needed to see. I first saw them in 2011 when it was kind of apparent they weren't feeling it anymore, and saw them again in 2022 on the Swarm/Reunion tour after the COVID delays. That was a great show, but there were a couple favorites I didn't get to hear, like Mama, and I don't know, there was just something that left me ready or needing to see them again. With this tour, they not only played my favorite album, getting to hear songs we usually don't, and they not only brought the theatricality back in full force, but they also packed an incredible second set list in, and it was so clear that every member was enjoying this way more than they have in a while. However, it's the theatricality that I especially want to focus on. A primary reason MCR is as special as they are is that they don't just write killer songs. They bring pageantry and drama and deeper meaning to their work on every level, and this tour may be the most full-blown theatrical effort they've done so far. While The Black Parade as an album and fictional band already had their own lore, in kicking off the Long Live the Black Parade tour, they fully reworked the themes of the album and existence of the characters into something different. Something very timely and very entertaining. There's resurrection, time loops, fascism, war, political violence, and a surprising amount of food. This tour has lore, so if it's tour lore you're looking for, watch some more. In this video, I'll be covering the origins of the Black Parade, a breakdown of the shows on the latest tour, and the possible storylines and meanings of this tour. While I'm really doing this for fellow fans who have been attempting to make heads or tails of all of this, I hope to cover everything clearly and in depth enough even from the outside. As a general warning, I'll be talking about death, illness, and suicide fairly extensively. And before I begin, I want to give a massive shout out to basically the entirety of MCR Reddit who have been instrumental in helping this video exist, but specifically to the creators of the Long Live the Black Parade megadoc. That is Clown, who I've worked with directly on piecing things together as well as on the doc, and NG, as well as Thal, who created a Kaposhka megadoc. I hope I'm saying any of that correctly. What's Kaposhka? Well, we'll get into that. And with that, come one, come all. The Black Parade is MyChem's third studio album and was released on October 23rd, 2006. Composed of the core four, Gerard Way, Ray Toro, Frank Iero, and Mikey Way, as well as MCR's most known drummer, Bob Breyer, the album is a rock opera about illness, life, death, and afterlife. MCR doesn't really not do concept albums to some extent, but this was their first explicit effort to do so and to tie it into the live show. That said, despite being a story with some specific details, it is not a straightforward narrative, and there are tons of different fan interpretations of the songs. I'm not going to recall them all here. If you're interested, you can find them online in various formats. Instead, I'm going to talk about the overall flow of what the songs may be talking about on a narrative level. The Black Parade stars the patient, a man faced with terminal cancer and little time left to live. The end details his introduction to the story, expressed with some self-hatred. Dead gives us his official diagnosis while also cluing us into themes questioning his past. What does your life mean if you've done bad things and nothing matters? This Is How I Disappear goes into that a little more, talking about the supernatural and the power of memory to keep one alive or let them fade away. The Sharpest Lives is about self-destruction in the face of nihilism, seeking comfort and numbing the pain. Then we finally get to the thesis statement with Welcome to the Black Parade, as the patient passes away and begins a journey through the afterlife, guided on by the Black Parade. Gerard started this concept with the idea of death coming for you however you'd like it to, with the patient's manifestation being a parade, hence the Parade of Death. I Don't Love You is a reflection on losing love and being left behind. House of Wolves sees the patient start confronting the pathways of the afterlife, judging his placement by his actions in life. Cancer is a blunt and brutal look into the sickness. Mama reflects on war and the evil of mankind, as well as obviously the character of a mother. Sleep is full-blown apathy and nihilism, falling into despair. Teenagers are scary. I mean, Yeah, still accurate. Disenchanted speaks on life souring with age and reality and not living up to your potential. And finally, Famous Last Words gives us a beacon of hope, embracing moving forward through fear and uncertainty, whether that's in life or death. And then Blood is a silly little hospital song. Like I said, there's many reads on this album. Some say there's 2 narrators, some say the patient never fully dies and lives on, reborn metaphorically. Maybe Mama is sung by the patient or by the marcher leading the parade, or it's about the character Mother War. The thematic cancer itself can just be seen as deep sadness and depression.
The experiences of being in my 20s and feeling lost and kind of aimless felt as close to death as I think I could have imagined.
Right.
And I spent a lot of years like that. And I think that's why I use the metaphor of death.
Regardless, you get the idea. Cancer and death are ugly and scary, but to be brave and push forward, no matter your sins, no matter the challenge, is what's important. There's a Medium article on the tour that has this quote that I really liked, regarding fighting on in a world dictated by decay and that's out to get you. It doesn't matter how, but the most important thing is that you do. That's all well and good, but this is also a band that needs to make money and tour while also expressing its artistic vision. And so the Black Parade is brought to life by MCR. Throughout the touring of the album, the band would primarily go by and introduce themselves as the Black Parade, brought here to retell this story. And this is the first time we need to split dedication to the lore from the realities of the live shows that people paid money for. The Black Parade is at minimum a metaphor, and at most characters operating as a band in the afterlife. Why is the Black Parade playing the House of Blues in the Land of the Living? Because MCR booked a gig there to promote the album. So as we go further into speculation, we'll have to really deliberate on the lines between theater, lore, and real life. In general, if I'm speculating a really big point regarding the lore of the show, I'll use Tinfoil Ray. If I'm talking about the pure reality of MCR as a band, I'll use, I don't know, Clip Farming Mikey. The important things to know are the Black Parade is an album about a patient dying from cancer and traversing the afterlife to discover meaning, and the Black Parade as a live act is meant to represent the band and the story, but at the end of the day is mostly just the boys in costume. So let's fast forward now. It's October 2024, and sometime after MCR concludes their reunion tour, the band is headlining the When We Were Young festival, playing the entirety of the Black Parade, as many bands at the show were playing through one specific album. I feel it's important to take a detour here because it did give us an idea of some of the aspects of the Long Live tour. In some ways, it was really a prototype. In terms of instrumentals and audio, you basically hear where Long Live would take things, especially in the interludes and ambience. Mama still represents the vibe shift it does in Long Live. Gerard starts to bring trauma elements to sleep, and the lights are consistent. Keyboard plays a huge role in things like Disenchanted, so on and so forth. We also start to see them use the back screen for timed images and videos. Do these all have meaning? Maybe, but in my opinion, it's too abstract to matter for this video in the context of Long Live. The only thing I'd say is that Sleep's red and blue lights made me think of cop cars and medical emergencies, tying into the pain and repression Gerard brought to it, but that's less relevant going forward.
There was a summer I started collecting knives, big bags full of knives. It's because my friend died, and I was hoping somebody would try to hurt me so I could kill them.
The most important element to me is the attire and how the main lighting and shadows were used throughout the shows. Something that is consistent with this show, the Long Live branded tour, and other shows after the tour is that MCR very much downplays its identity. The sleek, entirely black outfits, coupled with the lighting and the crossfading shadows on the backdrop, make the band feel like just that. Shadows. They're ghosts and after images that only exist in service of the songs, and the personalities of MCR are heavily separated from the material. We see this during the main tour as well, as MCR cannot even inhabit the same stage as the Black Parade. The Black Parade gets the fancy production and embodies those songs, while the B stage has MCR feel like it's gone back to its roots, just a band of dudes from New Jersey playing tunes. The live feeds to the screens don't even show MyChem in color, further removing them from the vibrant Black Parade story. Their most recent show as of writing this, at Shaky Knees, also uses MCR as an anonymous side element to the Black Parade, but we'll get back to that later. When We Were Young saw the band putting art and abstraction first, with identity taking a back seat. Okay, now we get into the meat of this thing. Kind of. Before the tour properly began, the band graced us with some pretty high production teasers that introduced us to the new characters and lore of the show. Our first look was in November of 2024 with the announcement trailer. We first see the twins, two soldiers present at the live shows as well. Then we get a look at the big man himself, the Grand Immortal Dictator. There's a lot to say on him, so more of that later. We also see who I will call the manager, who does appear later, and this general statesman guy, who we only see in other promo. There's also this lady. This could be a character from the shows, but again, more later. We get a look at the style of Draag and its language Kaposhka, designed by Nate Picos, and then the dates. It's also pretty important to note the description, which lays out the lore pretty plainly. It has been 17 years since the Black Parade was sent to the moat. In that time, a great dictator has risen to power, bringing about the Concrete Age, a glorious time of stability and abundance in the history of Draag. His Grand Immortal Dictator wishes to celebrate our rich and storied culture, fine foods, and musical entertainments by welcoming you to these great demonstrations of power and resolve, and lending voice and song for the first time in 6,246 days, their work privilege ceremoniously reinstated, will be his Grand Immortal Dictator's national band, the Black Parade. Long live Draag. So, factually to the story, the Black Parade are individuals who have been imprisoned and stopped from playing back at the end of their last tour. The Grand Immortal Dictator is in charge and, well, is immortal, maybe. And this tour is meant to be a display of the power of Draag, the fictional land the Dictator controls. Because I don't want to jump around too horribly once we get to the shows, I'm going to mostly leave this description for now. The things to remember for later are, did the Black Parade truly die? Who are these characters? And what does Draag share with the audience, and how does the Black Parade contribute to this? Actually, I want to go back to that first question for a second. Quick sidebar. How did a ghost band in the afterlife die? Is there like death and then also super death? Is Draag in the afterlife, or is the real Black Parade band from the 2000s being brought back to a fictional version of the real world? Is this like Ghost War by Tallboy Special?
When you die, you have to fight in a ghost war. There's no peace on the other side. You'll meet a ghost recruiter, put you in a ghost computer, give you a ghost gun, and say try not to ghost die.
I'm gonna be honest, this hasn't and will never be answered. Please observe the Mikey. It's a part of the theatricality of the act. But if you do want to reconcile this disparity, I have two options for you. The first is that the Black Parade came back from the afterlife to play the original tour and returned to the dead once it was over. The second adds an extra layer of fiction. The Black Parade is a fictional real band in the fake real world and is an MCR, and these fake real people died in the show in Mexico. Did that make any goddamn sense? Whatever. Either way, whichever you think is more interesting works. It doesn't really matter for the plot as we move along. Let's see what other promotion tells us. I'll mostly focus on videos since image posts primarily tease something else. The next video we would receive is called Opera. It shows 4 important looking figures, including the Grand Immortal Dictator, sitting in a row and being made to listen to... We also see this lady again, who has been dubbed the secretary by fans, the manager, the twins, and the opera singer. She may be another returning character during the tour, but it's hard to say. Initially, fans thought these 4 may be stand-ins for the band. I don't think that's especially the case, at least as the most important part. I do think individually their styles represent different aspects of power and also give big Four Horsemen vibes. However, the fact that this doesn't especially seem like a treat or reward for them is interesting, paired with the secretary overseeing them. What I want to focus on is the reactions of the 4. Briefcase guy is a little nervous, religion guy is totally boinking, and the statesman from the last video is laughing. Meanwhile, the dictator does nothing. In fact, he is tremendously apathetic and unreacting in basically every appearance. That to me is the test that they're putting these people through, and is actually the most important trait of the Dictator. This is also the last we see of these 3 leaders. That's the last extremely consequential promotional material before the tour, in my opinion. There's a video called Feast, which you should not watch if you're bad with eating sounds, and just shows the secretary's dog munching away and being fed by the twins, with all of them at a table with 3 empty seats. RIP. I think this could maybe show some kind of seizing of power. Again, vague. Then we get 2 major announcements during the tour promoting the Mexico and UK shows. The Mexican one is particularly interesting. We see the anchorman of the Draag news channel, as well as some looks into the land of Draag, and he tells us about the Black Parade.
On the 7th days of the 10th month of 2007, in a place called the Palace of Sport, it was widely reported that the band known as the Black Parade has never returned from their concert in Mexico City, having perished in flames in what was to be their final performance. However, it is now known to the people of Draag and to the world that the Black Parade is very much alive. And so, on suggestion of his grand Immortal Dictator, the Cabinet of Operatic Retaliations has seen it just to send the Black Parade back to the soil of their untimely expiration, and conclude their business with the people of Mexico City.
So first off, in step with any version of the previous lore of the Black Parade, the band died with their final show in Mexico, called The Black Parade is Dead. But they also mix in elements of the famous Last Words video to illustrate that they died in flames. We get a little bit more context for the leadership of Draag, like the phrase Ministry of Operatic Retaliations, and we are told the Black Parade is alive. But they mention their untimely expiration. So, did they die? We'll just have to watch the show to find out. And then for the UK, a bit less impact on the lore. It basically reaffirms things we knew from the show, like the game show Quizzo and the themes of nuclear war.
Who will be the next lucky country to win the grand prize of 1 nuclear winter?
And with that, we can finally dive into the show proper. There are more promotional clips to talk about, but seeing as those have just come out after the last of the 2025 shows, let's cover that after I talk about the production. For the next giant chunk of this video, I'll be covering aspects of the 2025 Black Parade live shows, combining details from every show into single categories. Instead of covering each show separately, I think it's more important to cover what each element and each section means as a repeatable piece of art. I'm going to start with the set design, which is completely in line with the promotional elements we saw in the announcement video and Mexico trailer. At every show labeled as a Long Live the Black Parade show, you'll see the stage adorned with giant concrete pillars, the band's logo in the Kaposhka font, a Draag skyline curtain, and Draag flags with the logo of a deer holding and being struck by arrows. The entire thing, including the language, is extremely Eastern and Russia coded, with brutalist Eastern Bloc architecture, and Nate Pico saying the language's design started with 30s and 40s posters from Russia, among other countries like England and Italy. The entire aesthetic, specifically the font, is made to be powerful and intimidating, and it obviously represents oppressive dictatorships and fascist dystopianism. To touch on the flags briefly, there's actually 2 deer logos used by Draag. One is a standing deer with 2 arrows in it and 1 held in its mouth, and another is a dead deer with 3 arrows in it. In Buddhism, there's a belief about arrows of suffering. Essentially, the first arrow is the pain and suffering experienced, and the second arrow is the reaction to the pain, anger, resentment, etc. I really think we see that in this deer, the symbol of Draag, who is using the Black Parade as its mouthpiece. The third arrow, however, is interesting. The third arrow implies an ownership and responsibility of the pain, instead of being affected by it, becoming the pain itself. This really matches the symbolism. In one image, the deer is wielding that arrow, intending to inflict its pain on others. In the other, the deer is defeated by that very arrow. This cycle of pain and the embodiment of it can only end one way. Next, we have every fan's favorite new wall decoration, the signs. At nearly every show so far, double-sided signs have been handed out to attendees, meant to be used to vote during the show. At 8 of the 12 shows, these signs were red with the white word yay, and black with the red word nay. There were, however, some changes over time. In Toronto on August 22nd, they had signs that said chicken or fish in yellow and blue. In Boston on September 7th, signs were all kinds of messed up, some normal, some with swapped colors, the same colors, or only one option. And in Tampa on September 13th, all signs display the red and white text yay. All of this does have a pretty clear meaning, but we'll cover that once we get to their use. After the opening acts of the tour, the screen would be utilized to show in-universe announcements and advertisements. There's quite a few of these, and a lot of them would show imagery that we would see later in promotional material. Some of them seem consistent to every show so far, and some have changed a little over time. But without exact documentation, it's hard to verify. Come on, MC Army, you didn't pay for tickets just to point your phone at a screen showing made up bullshit? Disappointed in you. A big one that fans stuck to very early on were these wanted posters. They say wanted in Kaposhka, as well as warning state removals and executions, and show unknown figures with blocked eyes and a big red X. Fans noticed though that we've seen this before. Yes, we have seen basically this exact layout for the Killjoys as an element of MCR's fourth album, Danger Days. This sent a lot of fans into a feral state, connecting the Black Parade and Danger Days through this unifying canon element. We will, say it with me now, talk about this later. Pre-show, there were ads for Soup Delicious, the Media Corporation as your only source of world news, the game show Quizzo, and Skolanko, nature's regulator. There's also more plain text moments, like starting in Toronto a phrase that says, "Save your tears for the wheat," old Draag saying, and telling us to have fun and behave at the start of the show. There's one more pre-show element to cover, which is this eye logo and either the phrase "nothing to see here" or "you've seen nothing." Based on events later in the show where this symbol returns, I would have to assume that this represents some censorship wing of the dictatorship, ensuring nothing problematic reaches the masses. It's another potentially interesting tie to Danger Days, as it's very reminiscent of the company Blind, Better Living Industries, in that story. I was unable to find photos of the pre-show in Atlanta, but I would assume they were the same. All in all, we get two very distinct vibes from all of this: a retro 60s, 70s authoritarianism and a dystopian future akin to Danger Days. Time is starting to feel a little hazy in Draag. Along with everything I just talked about, each show was given rules to follow. Sometimes they were in English, other times Kaposhka. On the whole, the rules are a mix of ominous dictatorship and what I can only describe as Gerard shitposting in his notes app. The first 6 shows all have the same set of rules. Families of 4 and under are expected to applaud for 30 seconds at a time. Any family or gathering of 5 or more members can only snap fingers and hoot. Clapping or hollering of any kind is strictly prohibited. No weapons, dental tools or otherwise. Please do not throw hair. Fight only when fought upon. Non-combat is discouraged in all areas. No touching. All feet must be covered from sight with foot coverings of some kind. Run slowly when possible. Fun having is mandatory. Mandatory fun is healthy for the mind. No time for bad times unless timing is bad, whereas make time feel worse, and so forth and so on. Give more than you have. Take what has been given only. Only sing along when unsure of the correct lyrics. So yeah, weird, confusing demands. Starting in Philly on August 15th, we got an entirely new set of rules that would mostly stay consistent for the rest of the shows. All members of the audience are to disregard rules from the following dates, and then a bunch of dates. Interestingly, these dates changed, but they never included every show. Never abstain from an orderly line. Any deviation from the restrictions imposed by rules 1 and 2 will require the necessary clearance or credentials in the absence of registered permissions. Credentials 1062B are no longer valid, but credentials 1062 are valid again. No green. If any one person in attendance is administered Rule 25, they may disregard Rule 1. Reading more than one has written is strictly prohibited. Any light contamination if produced by industrial runoff is to be accepted. Industrial contaminations are the nutrients of progress. Avoid all areas where neutrality is enforced. While partaking in community, corroboration is strictly forbidden. Rule 38 is back in effect. All displays of grief are subject to their proper inspections. All government behavioral specialists are to follow incarceration sequences at all times. Adherence to all rules should be equal to or greater than one's anticipated allotment of health and safety. Progress at all times. times. Under no circumstances may members of a household allow their ceremonial wheat to touch the floor of their dwelling space. All jokes must be cleared by the Ministry of Distractions. All violations of code will result in direct action from the Ministry of Operatic Retaliations and death to all who oppose. A couple things here. Rule 17 really nails home the whole ministry thing. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but Draag is big on ministries handling basically every aspect of life. Even the staff of the show are a part of the Ministry of Menial Tasks. I kind of believe that the buildings seen in the promo with those big single letters are some of the headquarters of those ministries. This also implies that the moat is the Ministry of something. No one's really sure yet. Maybe I'll figure it out as I go along. Rule 18 is actually a part of the Draag salute and is said during the show. And finally, Chicago added a special Rule 127. Regardless of expressing immense frustration, vermin are to remain caged at all times. This is because Billy Corgan played with them at that show. Again, I don't feel that any one rule is especially important here. Just gives you a general swath of hyper-specific control and something fun to read before the show. Before nearly every show, as people are getting seated, the song Tonight You Belong to Me by Patience and Prudence plays in its entirety. Obviously, in the name itself and with all the established fascist themes, this is on the nose. Tonight at the show, we all belong to the Grand Immortal Dictator. And if we look into the lyrics, it's the Black Parade especially who it's referring to. The song is talking about somebody who is gone with somebody else or leaving, but firmly claiming the subject of the song, regardless of any of that. It doesn't matter that the Black Parade were long gone. Now they're back, and they belong to the Dictator. There was one time a different song played, 76 Trombones from The Music Man. Now, I kind of suspect that this song was used in Jersey because someone's family member loves The Music Man. But with that said, there's actually a lot of lyrical content that fits in with this show. The song is talking about how the city needs a band in uniform and the general glamour and power a band holds, even leading a parade. While I still believe it was weird for this to be a one-off and probably for some personal reason coming home to New Jersey, maybe even saying that MCR is New Jersey's band, it still does fit the theme of putting the Black Parade back on display. We're almost to the actual show, I promise. Just a few more things. For this new tour, the Black Parade all have new outfits. At first glance, they might seem like the classic Black Parade outfits, but upon closer inspection, they're a little different. A little off. They're similar, but have all been modified with less white detailing and new red elements like trim. Their buttons also have added detailing that represents Draag, things like wheat and arrows. And the white seems a little warmer than before, less silver, more gold. It really pays to date a costumer because I would not have been able to go through this section in as much detail as I am without her help. So thanks, Morgan. Hi. Each member has been a bit altered. Gerard has goldish white. How do I say that? Goldish white aigulets instead of black, and a badge with a German flag and a Marianne medal. Ray lost some tassels and has a big red sash and belt. Frank lost some of his stripes, and Mikey has a different medal on the other side. They kind of seem in some ways like poor copies that have been made by Draag. To clarify, the costumes look great. I mean that Draag can't replicate the originals. It's also interesting that Gerard has gained prestige and adornment while Frank loses a cross and Ray loses a bunch of detail, replaced by the sash, which could indicate either his medical record in the band or high-ranking military. I think there are more specific lore reasons for this design, but something I wanted to bring up is When We Were Young 2023. MCR were dressed up in their classic Three Cheers era outfits, but also wore heavy makeup and prosthetics to look extremely old, mocking the idea of the band doing the same thing forever. The fact that this isn't a carbon copy of the original Black Parade's appearance may, in part, be that the band doesn't want to come across as old guys wearing young guy costumes. Beyond the uniforms, there's one member I want to focus on in terms of makeup. Gerard. While the other members are looking like themselves, Gerard's makeup has progressively changed show to show. We can see a trend of decay and damage and lifelessness. At the first show in Seattle on July 11th, Gerard looks pretty good. Some natural skin color, standard dramatic MCR makeup. But then he starts to get more discolored, adding scratches to one side of his face, getting paler, gaining some damage to the other side of his face, getting even more discolored, pale and bruised, even worse scars and punctures, until the latest show revealing even more intense cuts around his entire face. As I continue detailing this show, I think we'll see why these makeup and costume choices are not just for dramatic effect or statements on the band, but important textual truths of the Black Parade. As we approach the show proper, I want to lay out the characters we see in the show. I'll get into speculation about some, others I'll save for later. Let's go back to the head honcho first. The Grand Immortal Dictator is a big part of the shows, brought up by Gerard several times on stage. He has been represented by a mannequin at 3 shows, likely due to scheduling conflicts. Otherwise, he's there in the flesh, sometimes seen walking to his throne, in his throne waving, looking at the crowd, or chowing down, and getting up and clapping at the end of every show. There are many times where extra stadium screens will also show the Dictator the entire time, either just his hands or him in full frame. There's something I find really surprising about him though. Not to jump ahead, but the show clearly has political themes. Talking about American politics and society is not new for MCR. But if you're talking about fascism and America, and you have a guy who's clearly the one in charge making himself so important, this isn't what you make him act like. The Dictator's personality is not at all an analog for the people we're dealing with right now. In fact, his personality is nearly non-existent. He never changes expressions. He gives no indication of approval, disapproval, anger, leadership. He walks in, sits around for an hour, and walks out. This applies to Draag too. I mentioned Draag's culture earlier, but they really don't have any. They tell us how important weed is, but otherwise they're really only here to eat our food and wear our hats. To me, the Grand Immortal Dictator isn't an exact stand-in for any one world leader or fascist or dictator. He simply lacks the outward ego or any specific trait. Instead, I think the Dictator's apathy is what defines him. Rewinding to the opera promo, all of the other leaders are having some kind of emotional reaction, but not the Dictator. His position of power and whatever influence he may have is garnered not from wealth or force, but by a lack of any emotion at all. He's essentially a tool to help something else happen as easily as possible, whether he himself wants it or if it's part of someone else's grand design. When it comes to answering direct questions from Gerard or weighing in on decisions, I haven't really seen him give a clear yes or no. Instead, he looks and gestures at the audience. This could maybe be read as gaslighty, kind of implying his own desire by using the crowd to mirror it, but I genuinely believe he doesn't care. I think he enjoys his position of status, but at the end of the day, it's the demands of others that he's trying to meet. I'll tie this in more to the overall themes once we put the pieces together from the rest of the show. The second main authority figure we see from Draag is the Clerk, but we're going to have to dive into him more once I start going through the show. The main thing to establish is that this is the Clerk, and he appears on stage throughout the show to set things up and keep the band in line. One thing I'll cover now is the itinerary on his clipboard, which is consistent at nearly every show. It essentially follows the progression of what we see on stage. Sound check, the laying of the wheat, the Draag national anthem, salute the great dictator, keep the shouty one in line, deliver Podium, the great election, remove Podium, deliver Dagger, do what must be done. We'll see all of those reflected throughout the performance. There were only a few changes throughout the tour so far. Starting in Philly, the Clerk added, "Go Birds! Hell yeah, brother! Go Birds! Go!" More relevantly, in Chicago, the Clerk's final item read, "I don't know where I am," tying into Tampa, where his entire clipboard only had, "Now I know where I am." The Clerk is one of the most interesting characters of this story, so I'll be sure to keep checking in on him. To go back to the promo, we do see some of those other characters return in the show. The twins are back, present as the primary military and security force, doing most of the major moving of items and performance of ceremony. The manager also appears again, but only in Boston, monitoring the Clerk with his own clipboard, which copies the Clerk's except for an additional item. Well, monitor the Clerk. Well, okay, there was one other appearance of him, I think. In San Francisco, a supplementary screen displayed the manager writing some notes and looking over at the band. The rest of the characters all serve to help the band with musical performance. There's the Draag National Auxiliary Band, helping to bring the recorded sound of the Black Parade to life, and there's the opera singers. The primary singer is Marianne, and at 2 shows so far, we've also seen Sylvia, both accompanied by a character all referred to as the showrunner. Both wear the same dress, displaying Draag's red with embellishments of wheat, but are opposites otherwise. Marianne has white fur that is more covering, while Sylvia's fur is black, lower on the arms, and the black takes over her appearance in her gloves and dress. Notably, both have some kind of visual impairment. Marianne is blind and uses a cane and the help of others, and Sylvia has an eye patch over her right eye. So first off, have we seen these two before? It's hard not to draw parallels between Marianne and the secretary, or Sylvia and the opera singer. However, I don't really think that these are the same characters. This might just be a case of going for specific artistic visuals with this tour. If that's the case, then we have not seen the Secretary since the promo, despite her implying a major behind the scenes role. So if not tied to the promo, what do these characters represent? Their actions do not relay much meaning, as they only come on to sing the national anthem and during Mama. It can be noted though that Marianne's actions are more modest and sweet, while Sylvia's are more played up and dramatic. I believe Marianne is the more thematically relevant character, as she is the main opera singer for the show so far. Her name itself actually calls back to Gerard's medal. Marianne in French history is basically the symbol of victory in the French Revolution. That seems important. Beyond that, her blindness does seem to be an important thematic note as well. With her blindness, sparse appearances, and kindness shown to her by everyone, she has a very different experience of this show than most other characters. I think Marianne is allowed a small, cleaned up experience that hides her from the horrors going on around her, allowing her to be this very pure figure of artistic ability. That gets a little messy when introducing Sylvia into the mix, but I think she exists for a few reasons outside of the fact that clearly Marianne's performer just has some scheduling conflicts. Firstly, twin and duality imagery is very present on this tour. We've already seen the twins, and we'll see more later. They aren't clones or something, though. Allegedly, a fan spoke to the showrunner who confirmed that he is their dad and they are twins and not the same person. But I think these two represent two sides of the same coin. Both are performers that are allowed a certain level of separation from the machine they inhabit. But Marianne shows sweetness and purity, while Sylvia is bolder, edgier, and expressive. She only has one eye covered, giving her some idea of the realities of the world, lending her a more adult persona, even shooing away the showrunner's aid when coming off the stage at shaky knees. I think you can absolutely read these two as stand-ins for the types of young artists allowed to exist in the industry, especially as women. You can either be super clean-cut and respectable, or showy and mature, but still with limitations. While both together display a small window of personalities to inhabit, they ultimately are both restricted by the system. One final, actual, true last stop before getting into the show. This is just to cover anything I couldn't fit somewhere else. I've touched on the side screens already with the manager writing notes and shots of the Dictator, but there are a few other variants. In Philly, we had this view from the inside of a prison cell, or at least some kind of dark facility. There are some symbols on the bottom and some kind of reflection in the window possibly. It's hard to say. It's kind of an eye or might just be a circle. This seems to be conjuring imagery of the moat, or at bare minimum some kind of Draag prison or rehabilitation center. In Toronto and Tampa, we can see a field of wheat with a farmhouse, similar to imagery used later in the show. And in Boston, there was a Draag skyline, similar to the promotional images. Only one more thing to cover. Starting at some point around the Chicago show, the band started throwing out homemade bracelets into the crowd. Bracelet trading is a really cute, fun part of these shows with fans, so it's cool that they leaned into it. But the bracelets themselves are less cute. While one just translates to MCR, another translates to help us and we are stuck. That seems not great. And with that, I have given you just about all the context I can for the show. As I said, I'll break it down by each section as seen in all the different performances. I tried to cover as much as I could find online, setting up split screen viewing of different camera angles and creating my own doc, because I'm so neurotypical. Without further ado, let's break it down.
All right, we're gonna start now. Now it starts. It begins now, man.
The show begins with a military marching snare, signaling the start of this opening ceremony. If the Dictator is there in person, we see him here, either walking to or already sitting in his throne, which is set up in the main front of house tech hut. Then the twins and Clerk march out, bringing out a bundle of wheat and placing it in front of the drums, not letting it touch the ground, of course. At the same time, the showrunner brings the singer out. Up to New Jersey, the twins and Clerk would then leave the stage together with the drummer. However, starting in Philly, the Clerk stayed on stage to clock in the Black Parade as they entered. This was removed again in the last two shows. So we're seeing some of the customs and the overbearingness of Draag. There have also been two shows where the Clerk has had an injury of some kind. At one, he had an eye patch over his right eye, and at another, his left arm was in a sling. Looking at what happened at shows prior, I'm not entirely sure of the meaning of this. I think it's mostly to show that things aren't all great for him. Some also feel that the placement of the wheat in front of the drums is a specific memorial for Bob Breyer, who passed away early in 2025, I could see that being a nice little tribute. So why wheat? What is the significance of wheat? Traditionally, especially religiously, wheat has a ton of significance and different meanings. The main ones I see revolve around either sustenance or the cycle of life and death, or growth and rebirth. Wheat often represents something to feed the soul just as bread feeds the physical body. It's exclusively a positive symbol and represents something people need to survive just as much as food, as well as something that we can produce. In this case though, it's not Jesus, but instead represents artistic expression. The Black Parade, the album, is just one example of this. Made with love, effort, pain, and sacrifice, it's something that has fueled people for, at this point, decades. This ties into the life-death thing too. An important part of wheat imagery is that the life-sustaining light of the wheat cannot be achieved without sacrifice, work, and death. You have to cut it down to reap the reward, and Oily Josh says that wheat is worthless unless it falls and dies, laying the foundations for more wheat to grow. Wait. Foundations. It's a cycle of destruction that helps to create more and more spiritual growth and understanding. That perfectly ties into MCR and the Black Parade too. We know the making of the Black Parade as an incredibly dark time for MCR, and very real time, physical, and emotional costs went into its creation.
The second song, which is kind of unnamed right now, it was written at, I would say, the darkest period in this band's career, which was staying in a haunted mansion. Staying in a haunted mansion, people losing their minds, people having really giant personal problems, mental issues. In the middle of making this album, writing this album, it was the bleakest time, it was the darkest days.
But it was that sacrifice and that enduring of the process that produced what I call the best album of all time. And it's a process all creatives go through to some extent. And yet Draag has commodified wheat and turned it into a symbol of prosperity despite being made under bleak and crushing circumstances, even weaving it into the designs of their uniforms. They value the end product more than those toiling to make it. It would also be irresponsible of me to not bring up the deep Gerard Way lore. He said in the past that he really loves wheat and that it's comforting and chills him out. He has it as his wallpapers and backgrounds and stuff like that. And so that adds an even more personal layer to its appearance in this format. Is it here because it makes him happy to include in the show? Or is it a statement that something that he loves and brings him joy has been incorporated into this fascist system? No answers right now, but I thought it was important to touch on. Once the stage is set, Marianne or Sylvia will sing the Draag National Anthem. It's on YouTube if you want to go listen to it yourself and see the visuals they've used. Let's look into the lyrics for a second. Over fields that light the fire in our hearts that burns true. Under wheels of might we cherish our skies never blue. Like a baby's fists are broken, then grow strong enough to choose. To pick up the sword and strike the heart of doom. We in Draag have learned to prosper in the gloom. Over fields we live to die under the gloom. In universe, this of course just keeps painting the picture of Draag as a miserable place where there's absolutely no will to live. And thematically, I think it fits with both what I was just talking about and the original Black Parade message. The fields obviously inspire true passion, but everything about the work that goes into it and how the system constantly consumes the product is completely crushing. But as the Black Parade teaches us, even though everything is bleak and meaningless, what's important is continuing to fight on and fight to eliminate that darkness. I also think it's worth saying that Draag presents these conditions as par for the course, and we see this in the rules too, because progress is the only thing that matters. The only thing important to those in charge is that product continues to be created and people keep working. But we have to question, will those living in Draag realize that there are people in charge perpetrating these conditions and that something can be done about them? Moving on to the characters of the Black Parade once again, they entered the stage during the anthem. Without a clock in, Gerard performs this in a couple interesting ways. Sometimes he looks completely baffled, unsure of where he is, acting a little zombie-ish. Sometimes he's completely stiff with sharp movements and no emotion, and sometimes he's even firmly placed on stage, lifting his chin up to be present for the crowd. So in tandem with the makeup, he's not doing great. These physical affectations usually carry on throughout the show. With the clock in, the whole band is generally pretty annoyed on top of Gerard's movements, with Frank particularly acting out. Usually if you want to look for some kind of snarky response to what's going on, you can look to Frank. Throughout the clock-ins, Frank is sarcastic, pulls it out of his pants, spits on it, and sneezes on it. Actually, I want to take a second to address the other band members. I'm not sure how actively Ray, Frank, and Mikey are playing into the story throughout the whole show. They definitely all have moments, especially in later shows, but because any videos I find mostly focus on Gerard or main theatrical elements, I haven't been able to fully track their progression. On the whole though, I believe that the band usually disapproves of Draag's actions throughout the show, and they seem to get less and less enthusiastic as the tour goes on. Let's take Ray for example. It's been hard to find specific Ray close-ups throughout the show, but something that everyone notices when the cameras turn to him is that my man's is beaming. He's always got a huge smile, especially with big specific moments of songs. I'm sure Ray is having a good time, but I actually think that this might be somewhat part of the act. If you look at the last couple shows, that full-on smile has kind of dropped, and that general lack of extreme enthusiasm has consumed Frank and Mikey too. They seem more tired and act out more as time goes on. Frank is usually a little more dramatic about it, while Mikey frequently seems to fully shut down and dissociate. I'll get into specifics as we go, but since I'm going to be focusing so much on Gerard, I wanted to mention that I think the rest of the band is doing a bit more than we give them credit for. As the anthem concludes, we jump right into The End and Dead. These are mostly played pretty straight, but there are some small moments and things to touch on. Throughout the whole tour, Gerard consistently says "if you can see me" at the end of The End instead of "hear me." Now, there's other times throughout the show where specific lyrical moments are probably thematic narrative elements. This is kind of hard to say though, because maybe he just thinks "see me" sounds better now. This is probably one of those moments I mentioned earlier where this is just the band doing something for performance's sake, and not every tiny little choice is done intentionally or with deep meaning. Beyond that, in Arlington, there was a laugh track played before verse 2. Something we'll see much more of later. We get a glimpse of black and white stripes under Gerard's uniform in Chicago, hinting more towards their time in prison. At some point, the clerk starts monitoring Ray's guitar solo, specifically checking for the Woody Woodpecker riff in Dead. Honestly, valid. I was sad we didn't get that in Philly. Also in Chicago, throughout the show, Gerard starts saying "tick tock," and the first instance of that is before verse 2 here. Of anything to happen during Dead, I actually think this is the most important. There are a lot of themes and hints throughout the show that the band has been kind of displaced from time, or are at least very disoriented about what's going on. We'll uncover that more as we go. And that's really all I have to say about these two songs. So I guess they're not that tied into the deeper meaning of the show, right? Wrong. See, as I've said, to some extent, we have to accept that they're playing these songs because they're on the album and that's what people paid to see. They're not gonna omit anything because of some theatrical plot point. They know that at the end of the day, they need to put on this show. However, I do think that this tour was fully able to recontextualize the performance of the Black Parade into commentary on several fronts. And I think it's broken down into 3 parts. The first part, The End, Dead, This Is How I Disappear, and Sharpest Lives, all have to do with the band commenting on its own revival and existence. This goes deeper into MCR specifically, but I want to focus on the Black Parade as characters for now. There are so many lines of these tracks that if you change the context from The Patient to the Black Parade, gained an entirely new meaning. This is not a good and happy thing for the Black Parade. Gerard doesn't feel like himself, something doesn't feel right. This one was pointed out very early on, and you can hear people yell this line at the shows. It definitely feels like Draag is now Draag, and that the Black Parade is forced to live out their lives under Draag's rule. I mean, on the nose, right? Especially with the bracelets, they won out. The audience gives this whole act power. If there was no audience, they would not be forced to do this. The band didn't get what they deserved. They deserved peace and death, and they were robbed of that. Well, nothing really new here, but just showing that the same theme from the original narrative is still here. Fighting the fact that nothing matters, not even death. Gerard even laughs at the futility every now and then, especially at Shaky Knees when he was particularly giggly throughout the whole show. As we go on, I'll pick out moments of Disappear and Sharpest lives that share these new meanings. After Dead concludes, we get our first direct exposure to Gerard playing this Black Parade character. His accent bounces all over the place, generally European, but with different intonations all the time, or just dropping it. I don't think this character even remembers where he's from at this point, and the mix of accents is probably a result of his travels in life and death. We usually get some kind of "the Black Parade is back in action" statement here.
Where are you saying the States? The Black Parade is so nice to see you tonight.
We are pleased to announce that we, the Black Parade, are back in action.
The Black Parade is back in action.
The Black Parade is back in action, baby.
And then Gerard thanks the forces responsible for bringing the band back out. He mentions the Ministry of Complementary Reconditioning
The Ministry of Complementary Reconditioning.
and the Grand Immortal Dictator.
Brought to you by our most kindest, gentlest, Grand Immortal Dictator. If you would all be so kind as to make some noise. For he shall not die.
He says he forgets if it's reconditioning or reprogramming one time, which I think indicates what's going on there.
Rush out the moat, courtesy
Of the Ministry of Complementary Reprogramming, Reconditioning, I think that's what it was.
So first off, Ministry of Complementary Reconditioning, that's MCR. This is basically a metatextual way to say that My Chemical Romance is making the Black Parade do this. Again, separating them as entities. As for the Dictator, Gerard is always talking about how handsome and great he is.
Isn't that a look better? What a handsome fella. What a handsome man. Woo! Blow him a kiss, perhaps. 1, 2, 3. The handsomest man I know, and they don't just have a gun to my head. For he is a beautiful man. And Draag is a beautiful country.
And this is honestly the only point during the show that feels like a true reflection of real dictators who are always trying to warp reality to appear strong and handsome and smart and brave. Gerard also thanks the auxiliary band. In Philly, he specifically says that they have a wonderful new gentleman there, and he was definitely talking about Frank's dad. Oh. Also, at Philly, the Dictator was eating a cheesesteak.
Beautiful.
There were a couple little moments in Boston. Before Disappear starts, Gerard does some really big laughs, which is something he does every now and then, and I think is the band kind of mocking the show. Gerard and Frank have a tiny little chat, after which Gerard says,
He had not heard the joke yet. I told him what it was.
could be an in-character thing of them being more aware of their circumstance, could just be a real band chat. Another plotty kind of line came from Shaky Knees, as Gerard explains why the Black Parade had this one extra North America show in 2025. He basically says that Draag needs money for plutonium, which is a pretty clear allusion to how basically any capitalism works. If you're spending money on anything, you're probably contributing to something horrible.
The truth of the matter is, Draag needs money, folks, because plutonium costs money. You know what I'm saying?
The last two consistent lines that appear during this section are some variation of "you have dirtied our armored suit for the last time."
You have sullied our armor for the last time. And Richard, this is the last time you dirty this armored suit. You have dirtied our armored suit for the last fucking time.
And once more into the breach.
Once more into the breach, my friends. Once more into the breach. Shall we go? And so I challenge thee once more into the breach, dear friends.
I think both of these imply the kind of military vibes that the Black Parade give off, kinda hinting at their history and where they might have come from, as well as showing obvious disapproval for needing to don these uniforms again. So with this section, we get further separation between MCR and the Black Parade, with MCR being an active antagonistic element. We get capitulation to the Dictator, and we start to see that already the Black Parade is not happy about the tarnishing of its name. Disappear plays out pretty uneventfully, with only little moments here and there throughout the tour. Gerard says TikTok again in Chicago at the end, and is still laughing during the bridges at Shaky Knees. So let's go back to the line dissections and see how it applies to the band now. We'll get into the exact nature of what the Black Parade is right now, but certainly with a lot of Gerard's acting, he feels put together and reanimated, Frankenstein-esque. Similar to the last line of the end, this is the most important purpose of this song. If it wasn't for the Dictator and to a greater extent the audience, the Black Parade wouldn't be here and would be allowed to fade away, dying on its own terms. Referring to the Black Parade. I think you could maybe read this as the Black Parade questioning what the afterlife is really like, or maybe thinking that they've wound up here because they weren't good, like this is essentially hell. Again, not only is the Black Parade essentially haunting us and themselves, but they aren't even properly themselves. They're shadows of who they were, or maybe copies? Now we start to get back into some lore-y stuff. In between songs, the clerk comes out to Gerard and hands him a letter. The clerk is usually very cold and regimented, carefully monitoring Gerard. Gerard's reactions vary throughout the tour, starting out neutral but getting upset and shocked upon reading, sometimes very neutral and receptive, sometimes really faking his excitement and willingness to comply, sometimes forgetting to salute, causing the clerk to wait around. This section basically always ends with Gerard crumpling the letter, looking either sad or vindictive, and throwing it to the crowd. All of the notes are in Kaposhka, and all but 2 have been recovered and translated. Los Angeles didn't find one on night 1, and Philly has not found a letter either. What the shit, Philly? Oh well, we couldn't catch the letter, but we can catch a football! That's right, Super Bowl champions 2 times! Wait, no green? The clerk is from Bristol, so everything's forgiven. Anyway, the translated letters are, Mother doesn't love you anymore, Mother wants you disciplined, nothing from LA, but Gerard does say everything's gonna be okay. A horse with a silver tail neighs on a high hill. You are in Dallas, Texas. To further avoid premature shift departures, a time card system is being introduced to the Moat Work Release Program. Congratulations, you have completed your second operation of the Moat MCR Work Release Program time card system. If this feels familiar, like you've done it before, trust us, you haven't. This is not a threat, you will not think of it as such. Welcome to your first day at work. Here are some helpful tips to get you started. Number 1, listen. Number 2, no popcorn. Welcome to your first day at work. It is your first day, isn't it? And finally, nice to see you again. A lot of these are more thematic than narrative, but let's take a look. The first 2 about Mother could be read as gaslighting Gerard into a vulnerable headspace, or you could take it as some kind of authoritarian figure within Draag attacking Gerard. Some drew connections between this and Mom and Dad, who I believe are sentient TVs in the Danger Days world. I think if anyone, this could be Mother. I mean, look at her. No, but seriously, it's such a vague and ambiguous phrase that implies some kind of higher power, and it could be referring to her. The silver tail thing is actually a Lithuanian riddle, to which the answer is a bell tower. So I think that's furthering the themes of time. You are in Dallas, Texas is just inaccurate as far as I'm aware, so maybe they're just messing with him. The next couple relate to the time card system that started in Philly, and the second one brings in that this hasn't happened before thing. Basically, all the rest follow this theme and serve to disorient Gerard and keep him in line with the performance as much as possible. It also implies that while the shows have some progressive story, Gerard and the band aren't keeping their memories between sets, at least not fully. Based on things going on with the clerk, it seems like that's the case for him too. On that note, 2 specific instances where something weird happens. In Boston, while doing the salute, the 2 glitch and cause a feedback loop, infinitely saluting at each other. Frank mocks the 2 of them, pulls Gerard away, and shoos the clerk off stage. Gerard barely reads the note. And then in Tampa, where the clerk is wearing the sling, it's apparent that he's not doing good. He comes off as very defeated and meek, not imposing on Gerard nearly as much. As he walks off, Gerard seems concerned for the clerk. Clearly, something is going on that is starting to break the routine from show to show. This is the third time I have had to record this like half hour of the video because my audio keeps failing to save. I'm losing my goddamn mind. It is 5 a.m. and I'm losing it. Sharpest Lives closes out this first act of the show, and again, not a lot of plot-heavy moments here. To tie this into the themes of the first 3 tracks, though, I think this one again is about the misery of the band's continued existence. There's also maybe some foreshadowing to events later in the show. I think Sharpest Lives in particular is not just about the Black Parade's suffering, but considering it comes right after the clerk's note, I think it's showing a general avoidance of responsibility and safety to continue this act. Gerard is ignoring the things that will keep him in line and keep him safe, indulging in the self-destruction this song signals. I don't know if this character wants to make it out of the performance alive. Sharpest Lives and the preceding events signal the start of Act 2, crowd control. A podium is brought out to Gerard. He usually reacts to it in some way, either kind of amused, a little silly and dancy, or saying, "I'm so important."
I'm so important. I'm so important.
I also think it's interesting that Gerard is given a podium without a mic on it. He's given a platform, but no actual power or voice. The fact that this comes just in time for Welcome to the Black Parade is very pointed and intentional. There was also this really funny moment from my show. This is the song, right? This is the one we all know. This is the anthem, and they know that. They know how impactful this song has been to a generation. Frank and Ray even bring out their guitars from the video just for the iconography. The band plays one note, and everyone loses their minds. That is clearly what they're playing into here. The fact that all of the video is in black and white for this section with random clips of the downtrodden and weary masses, it's meant to feel like a rallying cry. But they're taking it even a step further and turning it on its head, pointing out the self-aggrandizing and dangerous nature of it. Gerard has called into mockery the self-importance of this track in the past.
All the best reviews that I'd seen, I think there was like a Blender review too that was like, God complex, check. This, check. It was all this like, you know, ridiculous proclamations, check. Like it was all the really, it was stuff that stuff makes me laugh. Like I think
at this point, or did it make you laugh then?
It did make me laugh then. It made me laugh when I'm doing it too. It makes me laugh.
Why? Because you were like, I've got all the pieces that are necessary?
Because it's so fucking nuts. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So it's no surprise that this is the band's interpretation of this song, especially in this authoritarian retelling of the album. It's expressing the dangers of inspiring words and the fact that with simple cues and commands and a podium to make you look big and important, everyone can fall right into line. This is the theme of this act of the performance. What can you get away with if people think you're important and go along with the crowd? And here we have the showcase of this concept, the Elexecution.
It's either an execution or an election, but I've started to call it an Elexecution.
This is one of the most layered parts of the show, hitting basically every deeper level. The commentary on the band and the audience, political commentary, and showing us what Draag is all about. This is going to be a really dense section with a lot to cover. So let me set the scene that took the first wave of concert goers by surprise. After Welcome to the Black Parade, some pre-recorded patriotic music starts playing. Gerard addresses the crowd, or just vaguely America, and invites them to participate in something. He's called it an experiment, a practice in democracy, and an election. As time progresses, Gerard corrects himself, calling out a mix-up of the words election and execution, and then eventually fully drops the pretense and says,
Let's fucking kill some people!
Remember those signs from minutes ago? We finally get to put them to use here. If you look over at the B stage, you'll see that 4 prisoners have been brought out and lined up. Gerard gives a variety of explanations for their crimes. Most of the time he'll say something along the lines of them questioning the longevity of the Grand Immortal Dictator.
Now let me tell you their crimes first, you gotta hear this. They dared to question the longevity of our most beloved and handsome Grand Immortal Dictator. Can you believe that?
In Philly, he said,
I don't even know what the fuck they did, but they're either guilty or they're not. Wait, we're guilty, but are we gonna kill them? That's how this works. I forgot.
In Toronto, very similar.
Who fucking knows? Who fucking
Chicago,
What we're gonna do is we're gonna vote on these people over here on this thing if they live or die. Why? Because the dictator says I gotta do this. Do I care? Not really.
and in Boston, they ate all of the cake and shared none of it, setting up a very obvious let them eat cake. Once the rules are laid out, Gerard calls for the vote, having the crowd hold up their preference. Most of the time, he explains that one side will spare them and the other will kill them.
And I swear, I promise you so badly that one of these sides, chicken or fish, will save your lives. Trust me. They're gonna die anyway.
In 2 instances, the vote was instead over food, voting on ketchup or mustard in Los Angeles and chicken or fish in Toronto. Gerard actually teased the chicken or fish signs in Philly, the show before they appeared.
One side says chicken, the other says fish, right? Is that... Never mind. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, keep the music on.
The vote is taken into account in various ways, but inevitably a drum roll will start. Standee soldiers appear, and the prisoners are killed by firing squad.
Ready? Aim!
They go as far as to have their bodies piled up and wheeled out of sight. That's real dedication from the actors. That's generally how this section works. However, its progression across the shows is important, and many shows have specific events that have occurred, so I need to go show by show for this one. The first time around, they played it fairly straightforward to establish this part. They're very clearly just helping dip the audience's feet into the water in Seattle. In San Francisco, Gerard says that the votes overwhelmingly skew in favor of sparing the prisoners, and then a phone rings.
Hello? Yeah, you know. Yeah. Like,
Look at his face.
you know, stuff.
They fucked them up since last time.
Yeah, it's next week. She's gonna be 78.
Stuff.
I mean, she likes the things any lady her age likes. She likes some hand creams and puzzles.
The opposite.
Yeah.
Of the thing.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll see you then. Okay, goodbye.
Gerard signals the execution and is clearly upset after it takes place. Clearly, this was someone calling and threatening the character's mother to make the execution go on. Now, depending on the interpretation of the Black Parade characters, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I think it can be explained either way. Either Black Parade Gerard's mom really is alive and being threatened, or they're gaslighting this confused, scatterbrained man to still believe his mother is alive and in danger. Doesn't really matter either way. At night 1 of Los Angeles, Gerard reads a really lengthy terms and conditions that mostly sounds real, but also has weird stuff sprinkled in.
Be advised that the forthcoming proceedings may include sudden loud sounds, abrupt changes in lighting, and visual elements that some individuals may find unsettling. This includes, but is not limited to, depictions of harrowing circumstances, expressions of finality, and matters of a corporeal and judicial nature. Individuals of a sensitive disposition, or anyone with no medical conditions that may be exacerbated by sensory stimulation or emotionally intense content, are strongly encouraged to exercise discretion. Attendance and continued presence shall be construed and acknowledged of this notice and acceptance of all posterior discomfort, emotional or otherwise. No liability is assumed for distress incurred by proximity, audibility, or line of sight. One more part. All persons are reminded to remain within designated viewing areas to refrain from physical interference and to comply with the instructions of authorized personnel at all times.
In my opinion, this is partially a real legal disclaimer, partially in character, and partially to make sure fans don't actually try to stop the execution or something like that, because some fans were talking about trying to do that. I kind of do think they wanted to make sure that fans wouldn't act up, because at this point some of them were already being weird. They also got hot dogs.
Oh. Hot dog!
And the Grand Immortal Dictator eats it like a freak. We also see that upon eating one, Gerard really doesn't eat any at all. This could maybe be a vocal health thing, but I actually think it could be in character partially. I think that with whatever keeps happening to put him back into the show, he's not really able to eat normally, and it all just falls out of his mouth. On night 1, the vote was split, and the Dictator decides by just kind of holding up his hog. Then on night 2, the Black Parade becomes the official sponsor of the Dodger dog, and the Dictator gets a giant one. Moving on to Arlington, one of the prisoners survives.
Wait, hold on. Oh, one of them didn't get hit.
Gerard remarks they should have gotten somebody from Dallas to do it. I'm so glad he got to bring his two passions into this tour. Wheat and the JFK assassination. Gerard says, let's see what she's won, and she wins a fictional car called a 2009 Baruva Dart and a goat, and she is in fact brought off stage and alive as far as we know. In New Jersey, the Elexecution actually happens before Welcome to the Black Parade. So at this show, the song gets cut off by the clerk, and they announce that the mayor of Belleville, New Jersey is here.
And the first note of that piano, the crowd goes
Yes.
crazy. I'm going, and then you're going to stop it? I have to walk out. Like,
He comes out to talk about how amazing MyChem is and grants them a ceremonial key to the city. There's a few things that make me laugh here because the band mostly stays in character.
thought about it. He goes, I'm not sure what the character is going to do at that moment. So I'm just going to need you to work with me.
Someone, I think Mikey, clearly starts a bit where the Black Parade is like, who is My Chemical Romance? What is this dude talking about? Frank kneels, which I think was a completely spontaneous decision that the rest of the guys played along with, but it does feel accurate to how they'd address authority in Draag. And after receiving the key, the band gives the mayor gifts in return, presenting him with the bundle of wheat from in front of the drums and a real ass dead fucking fish.
He goes, we're going to probably give you like a sickle from our land. I said, okay. He goes, and probably an animal. I go, an animal? He goes, an animal. And I said, like an animal. He goes, like an animal. I said, okay. I go, am I going to have to like carry it out or drag it out? So he looks at me, he thinks about it. He looks to his right. He goes, let's cancel the animal. And the animal was out. Little did I know that they've replaced it with a fish.
Right. So you didn't know
kinda-
they were going to present you with a fish in that moment.
And then the butler's standing there with this giant fish. And I'm going, what the fuck is that? And Gerard says that we have another thing. It was caught from the moat outside. I wasn't following it, but it takes it, they plop it on me. And it's been widely reported in some outlets that this was a prop fish. This was a
This is a real
raw,
fish.
dead, stinky
Oh, God.
fish. I will say, interestingly, in looking at the photo that's now out there of the fish, they actually wrapped it in newspaper, but it had cherry blossom branches in it. And Belleville is the cherry blossom capital of America. That's
Right.
literally our slogan. And I thought that was an amazing touch.
After this, Gerard really rushes through the Elexecution. I think they just didn't want to keep starting and stopping the show, so they moved it here instead.
He's like, listen, we only have so many amount of minutes to get this done because we have percussions and explosions and it's
Right.
an open air arena
Yeah.
and there's a racetrack next door and we have to time everything not to interfere with the horses. I'm like, wow. this is-
Wow.
In Philly, the Philly Fanatic came out and started throwing out cheesesteaks, and Gerard says that the Black Parade is the official sponsor of the cheesesteak. Honestly, God bless. This part made me so happy. I love that the Fanatic is vibing and then gets rushed off so they can commit war crimes.
You're having a great time. All right, so let's kill some people.
In Chicago, apparently the venue completely messed up and no one got signs when they came in. And then the clerk and twins and some other people started rushing to hand them out to the floor in character. Everyone is pretty sure that this is a genuine logistical error, but honestly at this point it might have been staged. It could be saying something about how only the people who paid the most money get to be a part of this process. Gerard does address it pretty plainly on stage though.
I think they got fucked out of signs.
In Boston, where the signs were all messed up with colors and text, Gerard is clearly confused what the actual result is and just has the execution go on anyway. I'm skipping Tampa for now because it's a big one, and at Shaky Knees, there was no Elexecution. With the lack of B-stage and playing for a non-MCR specific crowd, I guess they just didn't want to do this part. Instead, Gerard talks to the Dictator and asks him how the band is doing, saying that he's really the one they need to convince. Gerard says they're doing great, and a clap track plays as Gerard praises the Dictator some more.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great. My man, so handsome. One could just weep and weep and weep.
I really like that this continues the depersonification of the Dictator, really implying that his only input is the input of the people. Oh, and throughout all of this, Ray is upset and doesn't want it to happen, Mikey is despondent and ashamed, and Frank cycles between a few things. Sometimes he covers his ears or hides behind Mikey. Other times he pretends to shoot with his guitar, becoming numb to it. So in terms of lore, I think this paints a pretty clear picture of what Draag is about and follows through on that show of power they mentioned in the promo. This is Draag living by that death to all who oppose mantra. We don't even know if these people did anything or not, but those in charge decided that these people need to die for spectacle, so here they are. And then in terms of political commentary, this is also pretty cut and dry. Ignoring the woman in Texas, these people die every time. The execution is always made to happen. At first, there's some indication that the audience might have a say in this, actually able to express their vote and their preference, but are being strong-armed by the dictator. As time goes on, though, it's clear this vote never mattered at all. We start talking about food instead, the signs get all messed up, and in Tampa, every sign says yay on both sides. They slowly strip away the illusion of choice because it doesn't matter anymore. They're asserting their authority. This is clearly showing a sentiment of the game is rigged, especially in a political sense, though I think it really applies to anything where the rich and powerful give this illusion. This is about letting people feel powerful and in control and like their voices are being heard, while being sure to make sure nobody actually takes action or that anything could ever go against the plan. It's also clearly a commentary on spectacle, that people will watch and cheer for anything that is positioned as entertainment, going along with the crowd, along with the mass desensitization of people as a whole because of the seas of awfulness we now learn on a daily basis. And there's an element of social media to it too. The Black Parade and Dictator see opposite sides of the signs, but the participation and engagement is all that really matters, regardless of the input. So let's now talk about this section's implications for the Black Parade, and let's go back to Tampa. Yes, all the signs were yay, but that's not the most important part. At this show, the 4 prisoners are dressed as the Black Parade, down to Ray's hair and Gerard holding his puppet that comes into play later. Considering this was the last show of the North America tour, this is the big reveal. The band gives no indication that this is just a threat dressing up some prisoners as the Black Parade. This is some kind of variation of the members in the flesh. Gerard laughs in disbelief over the signs as the music cuts out and begins to plead for the lives of the prisoners.
One side says yay, the other side says yay. My dear people of Florida, clearly the prisoners do not deserve to die.
Frank uses Ray's back to write his own sign saying nope in protest. We cut over to the Dictator, who again gives a very non-response, just kind of motioning to the crowd, and the Black Parade is killed. Gerard is extra emotional going into I Don't Love You after this. This entire sequence more or less confirms something fans had speculated about for a while, and confirms the true nature of the members of the Black Parade we see in front of us. The Black Parade is dead. They never made it out of Mexico alive. Who we're seeing is a product of Draag, a recreation of the Black Parade, whether clones or copies or something else. After every show, as the band panics and falls apart, they're cloned, reprogrammed, have their memories reset, and the older versions are sent to die. This is why we get those pseudo-copy uniforms, weird memory and time glitches, and why Gerard is continuing to decay. With him going through the most throughout the show, it's been harder and harder to put Gerard back together. There is one hiccup here though, which is that female survivor from Texas. That kind of throws a curveball into this whole theory. My response to that is, honestly, I couldn't tell you. There are theoretical pathways you could take, but none of them are bulletproof. You could say that this is Sylvia, as this occurred before her first appearance and plays into her less innocent side, but maybe not every execution is the band, and this is just some random person, so that Gerard could make a Dallas joke. The only thing I remotely thought of is that it could be a gender thing. Mama has long been interpreted by fans as having themes of transness and gender identity, and this part is kind of showing that the girl gets to make it. This version of this person is the one that's allowed to live. However, I would only really double down on that if the girl was standing in Gerard's place, as Gerard is the only one who has really talked about gender stuff at all. It could also be in line with MCR's other works, specifically Danger Days, where the child gets away. I think MCR likes to have a young girl protagonist live on as both a nod to their fandom and encouragement for the next generation of voices. Either way, I don't quite have an answer for that part yet. But on the whole, the Elexecution is packed with meaning, talking about Draag's cruelty, about politics and spectacle, and about the Black Parade dying by their own hands. After watching some people get squad wiped, we go into I Don't Love You, and we kind of go from 100 to 0 in terms of lore and narrative meaning. Some songs do just kind of feel like, well, we're playing this now because it comes next on the album. Remember the Mikey. There's only one small moment in Tampa where Gerard says,
I just realized this tonight. It's like a field of wheat. When you did this, it's the death money.
so furthering the meaning of wheat and comparing that source of light and purpose to the audience. That's about it, but I do feel this song fits in with the crowd control act of the performance. After screaming and singing along and then cheering on the execution, everyone is immediately primed to bring their phone flashlights out and wave their arms around. At some shows, this just happens because everyone is already raring to go. Other times, Gerard specifically demands lights come out.
Let's see some lights. Let's see some lights.
I think this being such a staple part of the show and response to this song is showing another side of crowd control and another way that people are primed to follow orders. House of Wolves brings us another pretty minimally relevant track in terms of the lore context. Gerard says TikTok at the one show where he kept doing that. Frequently, there's some gnarly noise that gets blasted. I only really thought of two ways this could tie into the theme. One is that Gerard and the backtrack will howl and bark to lead into the song, and Gerard tries to get the audience to join in.
Bark. Bark.
Even going back to the When We Were Young show.
Let me hear your best dog impression. Rah, rah, rah. Like a mad dog, as big as a wolf. Big as a wolf. Big as a wolf and twice the size of a man. Let me hear your dog impression, mad dog. Do it.
So like maybe that's the crowd control of this song, getting you to do stupid shit like barking and howling. The other angle is one coming from the context of the song itself. As I said earlier, House of Wolves is all about determinism and finding your place, discovering whether you're good or bad by some higher metric. So I think putting that in the part of the show about people looking to be told what to do is fitting. Instead, it's implicating the audience in wanting to be told what to do and how to act. After House of Wolves, the Clerk comes back out with more demands for Gerard. Besides a few shows early on, the Clerk is usually already annoyed at this point, even if Gerard tries to relate and make small talk with him. He pulls the letter away and chews Gerard out. Gerard reacts in a few ways usually, pleading and trying to get out of it, mocking the Clerk, arguing and throwing a tantrum. The Clerk forces the letter, or in one case a folder, onto Gerard, and Gerard destroys the letter in some way and drops the folder. Anticipating what comes next, Gerard leans in intensely at the Clerk, and the Clerk slaps Gerard, bringing him to the ground. The band is sometimes upset about this. Only 2 notes have been recovered, one in Toronto saying "don't forget to punch in," and one from Atlanta saying "thanks" again. Some other variations have occurred. On night 2 of LA, Gerard blocks the first 2 attacks from the Clerk, clearly having some memory from prior shows, before being poked in the eyes. In Chicago, remember where they were throwing out bracelet pleas for help and TikToking a bunch, Gerard starts to slip while arguing with the Clerk. Gerard rips it up, seemingly out of instinct, and says, "What happened? What happened?" And he gets smacked. This just further plays into the copying and reprogramming. Another major break happens in Boston. Things start off normally enough, but just as the Clerk winds up for the slap, Mikey steps up and catches it, confronting the Clerk. His reward is a swift knee to the Ernie balls. Ray then goes to check on Mikey and Gerard. As with Frank, Boston was a big show for the entire band starting to wake up. And then in Tampa, the Clerk continues seeming will-broken. Gerard readily accepts the letter this time and hugs the Clerk. This is the main time I've noticed some kind of reaction from the Dictator besides clapping or tapping along to the beat, as he gives a kind of "what's all this" hand motion. To dive deeper into the sling, I think it's telling that it's on his left arm. The Clerk is restricted from the slap, one of his only real actions of retaliation and power throughout the show, but he's still able to salute. I think Gerard, seeing the Clerk robbed of his agency, feels a lot of sympathy for him during this show, and it furthers the idea that the Clerk isn't the exact same isolated figure of power that the Dictator is. He's closer to the band than we might think. As Gerard is recovering from the clerk, Cancer begins to play. The most notable event during this song is that at most shows a laugh track will play during some part of the song, sometimes multiple times. Usually it's during lyrical breaks, but it has occurred elsewhere, such as after the line,
Know that I will never marry, and baby, I'm just sorry from the chemo.
This is a really interesting one to me because in past tours, Cancer has been played with such sincerity and intimacy, but I think that's the point. This is this show stopping the Black Parade from showing any kind of real hard emotion or talking about anything with meaning. When they try to express this, coupled with Gerard already reeling from pain, they're mocked and laughed at. And the 2 times where a laugh track doesn't play, it's because Gerard has bent the knee to Draag in some way. In San Francisco, he does an ad read for Skolanko.
We, the Black Parade, are proud to be brought to you by Skolanko, an inviting, hearty feast with all the natural growth-like flavor. Experience the appetizing, captivating sensations such as you've never tasted. Doctors, nurses, and millions of Dragoshkas enthusiastically recommend Skolanko.
And in LA, he promotes the Dictator to Hollywood, showing a headshot and reading his qualifications.
To those of you in the entertainment industry here tonight, for your consideration, the Grand Immortal Dictator. He is 6'5", currently based in Los Angeles. Special skills include allied leadership, motivating large groups of people, and horseback riding. He is SAG eligible and rep by DAA. Sizes available upon request.
I also just realized that what he's handed at both of these shows are the advertisements he reads, so that's probably the nature of most of what he's denying the second time the clerk comes out. Whether it's through advertisement or straight up mockery, the band is forced to debase the sincerity of this song in some way. Cancer rounds out the crowd control portion of the show with a kind of inversion of what has been done so far, showing the kind of tension and confusion created when there's conflicting reaction to the intent. For this song, you expect the lights to come back out. You expect absolute reverence for the subject material. You expect the raw emotional reaction of fans who have had brushes with Cancer in their lives. And the band is absolutely not mocking them. Instead, the band is mocked in their most vulnerable moment. A great commentary on the reactions of many people in society, from those on social media to critics, and furthers the idea that the Black Parade is truly allowed no respite in their work. Because at the end of the day, it's all just an act, another product afforded no significance. Okay, here we go. This is the last massive section of the show. Mama has always been the most theatrical moment of anything MCR has done. It draws heavily from theater, going as far as bringing in theatrical talent in the form of Liza Minnelli, and speaks from a more directly character-driven viewpoint than much of the album. Because of this, it's only natural that MCR would expand that into the show's most theatrical moment, adding in a whole new section and filling it with narrative details. As someone whose favorite song has been Mama for a long time, I couldn't be happier. And just as the dramatic entrance of the Podium signaled Act 2, this drastic tonal shift with the red lighting, with the red lighting and sounds of phones and engineer chatter signals the start of Act 3, the bomb. The song starts with Gerard taking off the Black Parade jacket and the Draag skyline drawing back to reveal a control room full of screens. We see people writing calculations and operating panels. We're seeing preparation for a military attack. In the narrative, this is the start of Draag's grandest display of power. In converting the album's themes, this uses the back portion of the album to talk about the actions and consequences of violence, and reframes it as the end of days. The song mostly progresses as normal for a little bit after this reveal. At some point in the song, Gerard will grab a puppet on stage called the Gentleman, sometimes as early as verse 2. Sometimes he just holds or dances with the Gentleman, other times he will sing in a silly voice while holding the Gentleman to the microphone. The song carries on, reaching the breakdown where a man on fire runs across the stage. I'm sure you could attribute deeper meaning to this as trying to further blur the lines between knowing what you're watching is a show and worrying that someone is actually in danger. But to be honest, I think the conversation to include this started and ended with, hey, wouldn't it be cool if a guy ran across the stage on fire? Pausing here for a moment, I think a possible read on this section of the show is that the band is kind of being used as a distraction by the state to make people ignore the horrors that the government is doing. It's either that or Draag brashly displaying all of its internal workings and wishes for decimation. Either works well enough for the themes. We now reach an entirely new section that has been added to Mama, dubbed Dagger. This is the biggest departure from the source material, adding basically another mini song and several monologues. The stage lights quickly shift from red to blue. Gerard addresses the audience with a fairly consistent and rehearsed greeting.
Hello! How are you? You're looking better. Feeling quite well.
As the clerk enters the stage alone holding the eponymous dagger. Gerard retrieves the dagger and begins the song proper.
I've got a secret. We've got a song. Slim as a sliver. Not very long. And if you like it, blow us a kiss. It's never started. It goes like this. A dagger, please fetch me a dagger or two for my treasonous deeds. A delicate matter, yes, trust me, a dagger is just what this plan of ours needs.
I'm not going to recite every lyric here, but this is the most consistent transcription I've been able to put together. There are sections where words have been swapped several times, which are shown in parentheses, and I'm not sure if this is intentional or thematic or just confusions of the words. In essence, this entire song and entire section is basically a look behind the curtain, with both Draag and Gerard putting all their cards on the table. The lighting shift clearly signals this, whether it is simply signaling a break in the song or going as far as implying this is something mainly internal to Gerard. I'm inclined to believe that the blue light more so implies a backstage or off-script intent to what we're seeing. While Draag is showing us their true plans, Gerard is revealing his plans for assassinating the Dictator and liberating Draag. He attempts to recruit the clerk here, probably to get close enough to the Dictator to do the deed himself. They'll play along with the show and then, in the proper moment, strike and do away with the Dictator. Gerard then sings what I interpret as a longing for a time after the Dictator, feeling free once again and laughing at the collapse of his regime. I think the message of Dagger is very apparent, but what I find most interesting in all of this is the clerk. He comes out on stage alone without the twins and brings Gerard the tool he's asking for. The song absolutely could have worked with Gerard pulling a knife out of his wherever, out of his ass, and just singing about this plan to the band or something. But no, Gerard asked the clerk for help. Even after trying to control the band and retaliating against Gerard, these two have some kind of deeper connection where Gerard trusts the clerk with his darkest and most reprehensible plans. The clerk isn't horrified or angry, nor is he enthusiastic to be free, just concerned and a bit distant. In many performances, Gerard mimes threatening and stabbing the clerk, or more directly sings Dagger to him, and yet we don't get a reaction. It really reads as the clerk understanding that this needs to happen, but also understanding the risks, unsure if he should abandon this position of power he has and become a traitor. As the clerk leaves with the dagger and we begin to resume Mama, Gerard exposits to us both about Marianne and the gentleman at different shows. For Marianne, he generally addresses her very kindly, encouraging applause and having her wave to the crowd. The main thing he says about her is that
when she sings, she can see everything.
This could be some kind of ominous lore thing tying back into the idea of blind, or it almost could read as a carnival attraction, or bare minimum an over-spiritualization of her musical gift. He also says in one show that her father brought her to the act. Some thought at first that this may mean the Dictator, but with the showrunner allegedly confirming otherwise, it still fits my concept for her from earlier. She got this big gig because of nepotism and is afforded a certain experience because of that. Gerard is excited and kind to Sylvia as well, though she doesn't really get any lore. She actually even gets laugh tracked at Shaky Knees.
Say hello, Sylvia. That's wonderful.
As for the gentleman, he's actually been with Gerard since the Bullet days, and he gets a bunch of tiny disparate facts each time. The first from Jersey, that they met in prison, and that he whispered a secret to Gerard leading into Dagger. In Philly, he held the gentleman up and said he's got a secret for the start of Dagger. In Toronto, Gerard says this.
The thing about the gentleman, I'll show you, is that this string back here, it doesn't work. But he talks. Oh, he talks! And I love to hear him sing. One day, he leaned over to me. He whispered this in my ear.
In Boston, the gentleman gets a ton of mic time, but it's mostly just banter.
Do you know how to count in, Sylvia? Yes, sir. I've seen you do a bunch of times and fuck it up, so I can't really be that bad at it. Oh, gentlemen, sorry.
More or less the same for Tampa, though Gerard does reiterate that.
Some people say he doesn't talk, but he does.
And in Atlanta, Gerard says he has nothing to say, but he loves to watch. There's some really fun interpretations of what the gentleman could be standing in for, as clearly he's a big enough character to be shown in the promo. I think an obvious one is that Gerard is mentally falling apart from the moat and has latched onto this puppet, essentially hearing his own internal dialogue coming from the gentleman. However, something a little more nuanced and interesting is that the gentleman is actually the clerk. Well, not like Charlie Saxton isn't a puppet, he's a real boy. But throughout the show, we've seen that something is wrong with the clerk just as much as the band. He's having memory and control issues and is enduring some kind of physical harm. He also pleads to keep Gerard out of trouble and is willingly working with Gerard, coming out with the dagger and listening to his plan. I and many others think the clerk is another prisoner of the moat. He and Gerard met there and formed a relationship, but at some point Draag determined that the clerk could actually be an asset and reconditioned him into this role. And then after repeated torture and memory manipulation, Gerard might be implanting his foggy memories of the clerk onto the gentleman. If the gentleman whispered the coup plan to Gerard and Draag deemed the clerk intelligent enough to serve, it's even possible that the clerk had a part in the formation of the plan in the first place. And further cementing the tie between the clerk and puppets, his outfit pulls a lot from the Goosebumps puppet Slappy, a character described as a sadistic control freak and one who goes out of his way to make others miserable. Wait, Slappy? And the whole puppet without a string thing perfectly fits the clerk as well, a man without a voice under the control of the dictator. I really do think there's enough here to make these claims, while also understanding that the use of a puppet is very clear and easy symbolism for being an entertainer, controlled by an authority, and maybe Gerard just wants to do a silly voice. Anyway, all of this happens, and then with the help of our opera singer of the night, we finish off the song as normal. Except they flash like 20 images at us. Do all of these images have deep metaphorical meaning? Is this the key to understanding the entire show? Well, no, I don't really think so. I'm going to do a rapid fire interpretation of these images because why not? I'm sitting here anyway. But truth be told, I think the big picture purpose of their inclusion is more important. I think these images being tied to the line, but the shit that I've done with this fuck of a gun, you would cry out your eyes all along, is meant to give an impression of the weight of the history of humankind, or like the atrocities and horrors done by our hand. With images not too graphic, but cropped and framed in such a way to create vagueness for you to read into. I think they wanted specific kinds of pictures, went on the Met website or the National Archives where things can be free to use, and search things like knights or bombs. So at the end of the day, I don't really think each of these was meticulously chosen to be a part of this montage. But again, I'll do a lightning round anyway. Major shout out to Tumblr user Great Comets, who did most of the finding of these images. I was only able to find like 6 on my own. But I think they literally put this here because Gerard says the word but. There's war imagery. Shit. This one actually has huge meta-narrative ties. It basically encapsulates everything I've already said about Wheat, while also showing what is implied to be a veteran, which further ties into the Black Parade characters. That elicits Holy Crusade and Conquest. Also, this armored suit. The black bars imply censorship. The use of this idyllic 50s, 60s setting kind of brings to mind Depression, kind of brings to mind things like the Fallout series. Done and with. I actually found this one on my own first because I recognized it as the fucking Northeast Philly guy meme. There's a couple reads here. The focus on eyes calls to mind surveillance and judgment. The painting and artists were early examples of optical illusion, and the French word fly is a signature of the artist. Though the fly is cropped out of the show, the fly has its own interpretability as sin or the devil, while also tying in very nicely to the Swarm tour. This, more knight imagery, and also ties to King Henry VIII and monarchy. Fuck. Maybe it stands for opulence of. It's Caesar. He got stabbed. We just talked about stabbing, and maybe that'll be relevant later. A. Cropped to focus on the kids who look very similar, so maybe kind of a twins clones thing. Gun. The black dog could symbolize a lot of things like death and war. U. Missiles are about to be very important, and it also feels very of the era of a lot of Draag stuff. Wood. More military imagery. Cry. No one actually has any clue. It's a toy train. This is not the last time that toy trains will come up. Out. It's a bear. Your. This was a political piece made during the AIDS crisis, so it makes sense in a show critiquing governmental malice. Eyes. The idea of a choir of boys controlled to say a specific thing. All. We don't really know what the origin of this is or the meaning, so I think it mostly ties into that barbecue picture's meaning. Along. A photo of Lem A. Ward putting on makeup in the Federal Circus Theater. The phrase Federal Circus does feel very apt to the Black Parade in this context, and clowns will be coming into play later in the show. And with a silly PowerPoint transition back into the war room, we finally finish out the song. As Mama concludes, the clerk brings out a chair and places Gerard's jacket onto it. Once again, he is alone, and he seems to make eye contact with Gerard as if still contemplating his choices, maybe even worried about Gerard. Gerard mostly disregards the jacket. The lighting switches to a warm gold, and we're shown several scenes in Draag as the music swells. At first, normal fields and farm tools, then a bunker, then a Draag missile silo and missile. We saw the planning in Mama, and now it's time for the action. Actually, to jump back to Mama for a second, because we're still focusing on the missile, there's some Kaposhka that can be translated to the phrase readying Warhog. Warhog doesn't really mean anything and could just be an in-universe term, but I saw a really interesting theory on Reddit. If we use the context to replace Warhog with Warhead, that gives us the liberty to swap AAG with EAD, thus making Draag dread. I think regardless of how you interpret the story, whether it's in-universe or a stand-in for a political dictator or anything else, Draag being the embodiment of dread tracks so hard. It's such a good theory. The Black Parade is all about continuing to fight, and even included its own interpretations of this kind of thing in the original material with the characters Fear, Regret, and Mother War. I haven't understood those characters for a long time, so here to help me explain it is Pinhead from Hellraiser.
Succumb to the ones who will show you the way to this place. Regret. She will remind you of the things you have done, the memories, the pain, the lost love. Mother War. She is here for your heart, your mind, and your soul. Fear. You must face and accept her, for she has always been in your life, and now she will move on with you as well.
Anyway, Dread fits right in with those characters, as does the repeating of the term gloom to describe the state of Draag. It's this overbearing negative presence that annihilates any hope or ambition, just like the real and symbolic cancer was for the album. As he sits down, Gerard starts reading different books at each show, each with some additions to either the lore or themes. Caitlin Jones at Pretty and Steampunk on TikTok has great interpretations of all of the books on the tour, so I'll be using some of her dissections along with my own. At the first two shows, he's reading a murder magazine, a fictional magazine from the Danger Days era, clearly tying these two eras further together. I think his reactions also just show that he's desensitized to violence. Show 3 has a copy of The Day They H-Bombed Los Angeles with a Kaposhka cover. Apparently the plot has similarities to Danger Days, even more connective tissue, as well as obviously being relevant to what we're seeing Draag do right now. Show 4 Gerard is reading Toy Trains to the Gentleman and gets upset at it. I'll let Caitlin handle this because it's a pretty deep dig for a theme here. This could maybe explain the train image earlier too.
It includes a lot of historical information because it is specifically about the rise of train making in the 1920s and 30s in Germany. So it is about industry in the uprising of authoritarianism and fascism in Germany.
Show 5, Peterson Field Guide to Insects, again reading to the gentleman. Much like the murder mags, this seems to connect to other MCR stuff, but this time Swarm, and also talks about how it's more rewarding to observe insects as opposed to killing and mounting them. Heavy implications for the Black Parade. Show 6, Scientific American, Into the Quantum Realm, implies time shenanigans and multiple universes, or in this case, versions of consciousness. It also includes the phrase cosmic spaghetti at the show where Gerard does this. Show 7 is Gerard solving puzzles, implying that there are puzzles and mysteries to solve for us, the audience, as well as that Gerard is trying to figure something out about all of this. He's also showing this to other members, trying to break them out of that mind control as well. Show 8, Vogue, with an article about, again, quantum theory and the merging of universes. Show 9, A Cat's Brain by Paw Print Magazine. It's about operant conditioning, modifying behavior with reward and punishment. Ties into the show, but also Rat in a Cage. Show 10, he starts to read how to really motivate people, which is gross and businessy and authoritarian in theme enough, but then he finds a copy of the Gemini Process Manual, a book made specifically for the tour, as we see the Draag symbol on the back. Up until now, Gerard's reactions have mostly been curiosity, amusement, maybe some frustration or sadness. This book enrages and shatters Gerard. I think this is the hard proof and his realization of the repeated copying of the band. It also ties into a filmmaking process used to double an actor on screen, so yeah. Show 11, The Young Acrobat. It's about a guy who joins the circus and eventually leaves it behind. Clearly ties into the Black Parade being stuck in this show and being made an oddity and a freak show. However, Gerard also finds a postcard in this book, another thing that feels planted by someone else like the Gemini book. He looks extremely confused about this, like there's a memory he just can't quite place. Gerard, you were just there, sweetie. No, but I think this is further tying all versions of Gerard in My Chem and the Black Parade together through the multiverse. I think whatever they're doing to his mind is somehow related to multiversal identities and is starting to slip. And finally, show 12, he reads The Way of the Samurai. There's a part that talks about ceremonial suicide in a manner that really describes what the band is going through with the audience and specifically the end of the show, you'll see. And the whole idea of the samurai being a culturally honorable thing that is over romanticized applies to the band too. And then Sleep plays. Thankfully, we're moving on to less dense speculative territory for a minute. Story-wise, we see the launch of the missile as prepared in Mama. There are some lyrics added now and then, like Gerard saying and as well as the omission of lyrics. Specifically, Gerard never says the full word tyranny, instead getting the crowd to sing it. Very much draws attention to that word. There's also a consistent new part at the end where Gerard says which I think is going further into the themes of choosing to reject apathy and despair and dread versus giving in and fading away. Otherwise, the only thing I want to figure out here is those red and blue lights from when we were young, as they appear again here during the main riff and choruses. I still think that with the way this song is used, it's still related to trauma. I'm just not certain how. It could still be something about emergency vehicles pulling what remained of the Black Parade out after their death. It could also be memories of the reconditioning process, as red and blue light is used to help the healing and regeneration of skin. I don't know, it means something, but I haven't fully figured out an answer that sits right with me just yet. As the song ends, the clerk is back on stage with the twins. He is not sided with Gerard, and at certain shows you can see Gerard even acting a little apprehensive and betrayed. This section always ends with the jacket going back on, frequently forced on by the clerk, and Gerard acting even more stiff and undead than usual, almost as if the jacket is a source of the control. Before this happens, Gerard bounces between trying to joke and appeal to the clerk, fussing, mocking him, or distracting him. In response, the clerk will usually yell at Gerard or force the jacket back on, sometimes threatening the gentleman, one time yelling, maybe to lighten the tone of the aggression going on. The rest of the band actually bet on that fight, Frank lost to Ray. Other times, though, Gerard just sadly relents, one time getting an ass slap. There have also been times where Gerard more willingly puts on the jacket. In Boston, going along with the other glitches, Gerard actually put the jacket on before sleep. And so when the clerk came out, they got stuck yelling really good at each other. And then at the show where the clerk was sad, he puts the jacket on himself as to not embarrass the clerk. I don't think this section shows a ton of deeper meaning different than anything we've discussed already. Beyond that, the donning of the uniforms themselves play a role in the subjugation of the band. Teenagers does something really important in my opinion, which is addressing that the song has a really hard time fitting into this album. If you ask most fans about the Black Parade, more and more over time seem to say that Teenagers just doesn't fit. Regardless of whether or not it's a good song, some may try to justify it as a recollection of the patient's life, but it really does read like a single that they wanted to put on because it was timely and because Gerard wanted to sing about it. I also think it serves to keep the back half of the album from being a complete misery fest until you get to Famous Last Words. It serves as a little break in this opera of darkness, and that's exactly how they use it in the show, but with a more cynical edge. Teenagers is a commercial break. During the song, we don't see the band play on screen at all. Instead, we're basically channel surfing Draag TV. The game show, the news, and interpretive dance that further solidifies the weed symbolism, singing, and ads. I think on the self-analysis side of things, this performance of Teenagers critiques the song as a product, something with more emphasis on reaching the masses rather than delving into the depths of the rest of the album. In the narrative sense about the end of the world, as the missile has launched in sleep, I think we're playing the role of a Draag citizen here, watching TV safely in our homes, until it's interrupted by... As the noise from Teenagers fades, we get a broadcast basically telling us that the bombs are flying, this is the end, and that this is the cost of greatness.
Our time has come. The button pressed, and a simple act has meaning. A single word repeats across the stars, and then our hearts. Greatness. Then comes the time when all must ask, what cost too high? What loss so great? To scroll our names as sand, or chisel them in concrete. Good night, my friends. Good night to all.
This callousness and lack of humanity can apply to basically any theme on the album, just disregarding the welfare of literally anyone but those in charge in favor of some self-proclaimed goal. As this broadcast is happening, we start up Disenchanted, accompanied by images either of the Draag flag or a foreboding image of the Dictator. In all cases, I think this song essentially acts as like credits music for the end of the world. It has a very everything is over vibe to it, and coupled with the imagery, it almost plays the role of the national anthem playing at the end of a broadcast day on old TV. Considering they've used that exact sonic imagery before, I wouldn't be surprised if they were going for that again. Also at the Philly show, we held up Purple Lights as a fan project, and this is the acknowledgement we got. Then we have Famous Last Words, and I don't know. I really don't know. I've wormed the rest of the songs into a theme in some way, but Famous is really hard to do that with. This isn't some act of rebellion or defiance by the band to try to stop the war or something. This is mostly just My Chemical Romance playing the song, I think. And it's clear that they take this moment to really appreciate the audience, which is nice. Gerard has two quotes throughout the tour that might help us find a meaning. The first is a quote from Moby Dick.
To the last, I will grapple thee. Somehow was hot, I stab at thee. For hate's sake, I spent my last breath at thee.
The second is saying this near the end of the song.
To burn is the fury
With the pyro on stage clearly calling back to the Famous Last Words video and the death of the band, I think all of this conveys a message about resolution in finality. Once again, it questions the distorted nature of the Black Parade now before us, and tells us that their demise in flames on their own terms was natural and beautiful. Death in the end isn't something to run from. It can be a perfect conclusion, letting something rise to legend. On the other hand, what is the white whale that the Black Parade is after? Is it the Dictator and the idea of solving all of the world's problems, or is it the idea of a perfect ending itself? If the former, maybe it's saying that a dagger was never the solution, and questions the validity of the Black Parade as a savior in the modern world. If the latter, maybe it's saying that a beautiful, perfect end on our own terms isn't something that's possible, or even smart. What happens next if that's your big plan and you make it out alive, and the world keeps turning? Towards the end of the song, we check back in on the missile. We see its trajectory on an odd, probably parallel universe map, note the red, white, and blue colors, and get a countdown for the impact. As the song concludes, the countdown reaches 0. The bomb has made its impact, and noise fills the stage. And yet, for the Black Parade, the show is never over. Familiar guitar chords ring out through the noise. The end starts playing again, and the band starts performing as normal. From the very first time this happened, it already cemented that there was some kind of loop. Whether it's as literal as a programmed loop that the Black Parade can't operate outside of or not, the Black Parade is stuck. They can't live, they can't die. This is all they can do. Interpreting the performance comes with a new element though. The clerk, dressed as a clown, more specifically Pierrot. I'm gonna try saying it the proper way one time, and then I'm just gonna say it the wrong way the whole rest of the video. Pierrot. I didn't need to do an accent for that. Pierrot. 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 Whatever. What time is it? 7:05 a.m. The idea of Pierrot has a lot to unpack, so I'll let Trevor Daly here on TikTok help me out.
Indeed, this is an iconic character from a theatrical tradition almost 400 years old that goes by the name of Pierrot. Pierrot was first penned into existence by the legendary French playwright Molière. The character of Pierrot became preserved and reinvigorated through the talents of Italian professional theater troupes called Commedia dell'arte. These were semi-improvised, semi-structured theater troupes that would use repeatable characters and repeatable jokes to make commentary on current events. Through all these art forms, the character of Pierrot has always reflected the artist's alienation from society and society's own displacement from itself, although in different ways in different eras. He became more esoteric, more sophisticated, more of a mourner of meaning, a mourner of art, a mourner of sincerity lost to commodification and war. Pierrot's sadness is not dramatic, but tired, quiet, and reflective, kind of exemplifying the weariness people feel in a world they don't believe they can change. The thematic lineage is clear because the sad clown in this element becomes the vessel of emotional rupture and violence.
So we have a clown here. I'm going to call him the clown because it's closer to clerk, embodying deep sadness at being left behind by the world. But as we'll see, his role is not a victim of change. He is a tool being used to keep a traumatic status quo. The clown comes out, mirrors Gerard's movements, and dances around as the song goes on, abridged. Meanwhile, we see the destruction of the bomb, wiping out houses in real-life footage. Then the clown reveals a dagger and finally delivers the dagger. See, I think this box on the checklist doesn't refer to Mama's dagger interlude, because that's played like a secretive moment. I think the placement of this item on the list implies that the stabbing is the delivering of the dagger. Furthermore, I think the outfit and mirroring Gerard is the Dictator's way of mocking Gerard, essentially calling him a sad clown and killing him by the method he planned to use on the Dictator. Gerard is covered in blood, either from a cool mechanism of the knife or holding a blood pack, and collapses to the floor. He crawls forward. We see an outline of where he will die. It's been there all along. The Dictator knows exactly how this story goes. As he finishes the song, he presses a button, and we see the full explosion in the background. Now, a small issue. No one understands what the fuck this button does. I have not an earthly goddamn idea what this is doing. Maybe he's just being dramatic because that's where he cues other sound effects from, but he's not setting off the bomb. That's not how missiles work. And he's not retaliating against Draag because the Dictator is just peachy after the show. My only guess about this is that maybe Gerard is saving the audience. It could be that Draag is striking each location that the show is taking place at, and that whatever Gerard is doing is stopping the war from affecting us. Symbolically, Basically, he's taking on the pain, containing it within the performative setting of the stage. Meanwhile, the two guitarists are bagged and captured, and Mikey runs off. Most of the time, he catches the twins by surprise with his bass, but one time he offered it to them in exchange for running off. The drummer is also captured, but the keyboardist is escorted off with wine and an Air Draag plane ticket. It's implied that he's some kind of mole, a traitor and insider for the state. The clown is not happy about what he's done. His emotions leading up to and reactions to the stab have varied over time. Most of the time, he stabs with conviction and malice, and then upon seeing Gerard fall and the blood on his hands, he kind of snaps back to reality. He's in shock and disbelief about what has happened, seems lost, and talks with somebody on the phone. In Philly and other shows, though, the clown is distraught. He can be seen fully breaking down in tears, saying on the phone, "It's so bad, I want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore." The only time this is really different is the Tampa show, where the clown seems to be psyching himself up for the stab and is maniacally happy after, saying, "Mama, I did it, I killed him." This is the show where Gerard showed the most compassion for the clerk, and I think that's exactly why he had to approach this with more wrath than usual. It could be seen as needing to enter a mindset of pure anger to justify the killing, or that he's angry at the compassion, hurting more than anything physical Gerard could ever do. And so we complete our confirmation of the loop theory and explain why Gerard in particular is decaying more and more each show. It's probably harder to clone and reanimate somebody from this state, whereas the other band members don't actually get harmed. The clerk clown's reactions to the stab further implies his mind controlling as well. The show's not over yet though, because we have a little epilogue in the album's hidden track, Blood. During this pre-recorded track, the clown dances around and lip syncs to the song. His emotions change show to show. He can fully play into the camp and theater of it, recovering from his shock, but he can also start and end more upset or even angry. Occasionally he's nice to Gerard, apologizing to the gentleman and laying him with Gerard, but other times he kicks Gerard, dumps pasta on him, or uses him as a puppet. I like this little moment where he does the Draag salute to the word cooperation. There's also these mechanical sounds of cranking and whirring during the song. It's not on the normal track, and I interpret that as them essentially rebuilding and reprogramming the Black Parade. It could be tied to the bomb though. Oh, yeah. There's a bomb strapped to my chest! As the song winds down, the clown reveals a bomb vest with the eye logo from the pre-show. I think this confirms that this is a symbol of censorship, essentially erasing anything out of place or out of line. The clown gives a wave goodbye, and there have only been two major variations to this. In Tampa, Gerard actually gets back up and is chased around and stabbed multiple times before hugging and blowing up with the clown, making the clown very happy. Then, at the final show so far, Gerard doesn't actually die on stage. He starts to get up and crawl off. The clown kicks, stabs, and yells at him while trying to perform, but he does make it off. Presumably, he's still captured and or dies though. I think Blood essentially serves as the clerk's theme song, so I'll use this section to go in depth about the clerk. I think tying this character to this song does help prove the theory that he's another prisoner and also being reconditioned. It also details the clerk's experience under Draag. He's the perfect candidate for this position, messed up, malleable, and willing to do anything to comply. So that's in canon, but what does the clerk stand for? Well, he's the opposition, but he's also the middleman. He's someone who doesn't have will or conviction of his own and is closer to the Black Parade than the Dictator. It seems like he only likes when things go smoothly or when he gets power as much as he likes avoiding punishment. In the context of politics and fascism, I think he represents the other side. I think he's someone that's so indoctrinated by the Dictator that he can't see that what the Black Parade wants is helpful for him too, that freedom is helpful for him too. I think that's why he's the most raging rageful as the clown at the Tampa show. Throughout the show, Gerard shows him kindness and empathy, which he does not ever get. This causes so much internal turmoil about his convictions that he needs to basically lose his mind to go through with his mission. In this way, I think the clerk tells a message about knowing the real enemy, not the one on the same level as us put on stage to fight each other, but the one so far away and far above that they're able to divide and control with safety. Some people also feel that the clerk is an actual symbolically literal mirroring of Gerard, or at least his internal machinations. In this line of thought, the clerk represents a nagging part of the mind that won't stop focusing on following the rules for success, trying to be perfect and play a certain role. I don't really care for this theory, to be honest. I think if he does stand in for something more tied to reality, it's more likely others in Gerard's life that he has felt pressured by or that he feels are ultimately at the whim of fame and fortune. And so the show ends with a bang. Like I said though, My Chem packs in a fantastic set list for the B stage, but they need a little time to set up. As an intermission, we get from A to B a cello solo. The main thing to note here is that the screen imagery used for this section is a deer decaying from insects. Of course, this brings about even more direct ties to Swarm and Foundations of Decay. The fact that it's a deer is also relevant though. While I'd normally say that this is a death of innocence thing, the deer is Draag's symbol. I think this is basically following through on the war and that Draag flag. Draag has destroyed itself, and as it decays and fades away, My Chemical Romance is able to reemerge as itself once again. The only show that has not included this is Shaky Knees, and much like When We Were Young, I think this shows that this is how they intend to handle post-show songs at festivals. They're obviously not going to do 2 full sets at those, so they'll come back out at the end and play a couple hits. I love the way they did this at Shaky Knees though, and it goes back to that separation of the Black Parade and MCR I was talking about. Once the show is over, screens essentially only display static, with MCR as dark silhouettes barely breaking through. They've played around with the idea of movie credits music before with Vampire Money on Danger Days, and I think that's essentially what they're going for here. My Chem is playing the credits at the end of Long Live the Black Parade. Whether they're symbolically or literally shadows, we never truly see My Chemical Romance inhabit the role of the Black Parade. And that's the entire Long Live the Black Parade tour so far, broken down and dissected. Now let's try to parse what it all means as one piece of art. For my money, there's 4 major reads of this: the in-universe lore of Draag, the connective tissue of the Black Parade, Danger Days, and beyond, the political themes that modify the existing narrative of the original album, and the band's direct self-aware commentary. I'll go through them in that order. The story of Long Live the Black Parade stars the Black Parade, resurrected, imprisoned, and reprogrammed by the Grand Immortal Dictator to turn them into an infinite product of entertainment and propaganda for the land of Draag. Draag itself is a desolate and miserable land under complete subjugation by various ministries and governmental entities. The people there are hardworking and persevering, but doomed to submit all work product to the government in the form of wheat, live in a polluted, dreary environment, and watch trivial and propaganda-filled television. This tour is essentially made to act as a military parade for Draag, displaying their capacity for violence against nonconformists and their desire for destruction. This culminates in Draag launching a nuclear attack against an opposing country. This could be another fictional country, alternate reality America, or specifically where each show is located, but it's anyone's guess. Immediately as the show begins, it's clear the Black Parade does not support this and does not want to be here. In 3 acts, they display the pain of their existence, the influence Draag has over people, and the threat Draag poses to the world. Throughout the show, the band is forced to stay in line, people are killed, and the singer proposes an assassination attempt only to be killed and reset, continuing this same performance again in another city while the Dictator walks away content. Let's cover some more specific questions now. What is the nature of the Black Parade's resurrection? Based on the implication that they did die in flames and that these are not the original uniforms, I'm inclined to believe that these are not the original versions of the Black Parade. Not in body, at bare minimum. I think their minds have been copied by imprecise scientific means, their bodies have been cloned, and they have been reconditioned to follow Draag's orders and praise the Grand Immortal Dictator. While in the moat, I never did figure out what it means, Gerard met another person in whom he found camaraderie and companionship. This person was deemed intelligent and useful by the Dictator, and thus reprogrammed into the Clerk, someone made to administer punishment, but also who holds sympathy for the band and is himself mistreated. While there are themes of time present throughout the show, I don't think any actual science fiction time travel is occurring here. I think the retro-authoritarian dystopia seems to mess up timelines a little bit, depending on how you look and think of the Black Parade and Danger Days. We'll get back to that in the next section. But no, I don't think that there's time travel that is pulling versions of this band into the show, nor do I think the band is literally stuck in a loop to only perform the album. I think this is more experimental and psychological, using various methods of torture and manipulation to condition them into this role. And when Gerard dies, they slapdashedly put him back together in time for the next show, causing consistent wear and tear. Is the Grand Immortal Dictator actually immortal? This title and claim is very in line with many real historical dictators who present themselves as greater than human gods. So it may absolutely just be a title. On the other hand, what do we know about that could make him immortal in canon? Well, he may be a vampire if blood is to be taken literally, but besides the dark and spooky vibe, he doesn't really give me vampire energy. I think if anything, he either feeds on despair or, dread, or souls. If we go with the latter, this adds an interesting ritual sacrifice element to the Elexecution and a new purpose to the bomb. Instead of incantations and sigils, we have political motivations and a vote. But this doesn't satisfy the dictator, so he intends to kill as many people as he can. This, paired with him being an Instagram food reviewer, frames him as this ravenous, never satisfied black hole whose sole purpose is to consume as much as he can with no emotions driving this hunger. Think of the Void from Hollow Knight. Yes, I am making this reference because I've been obsessed with Silksong. More of an entity than an animal, something that feasts on power mechanically rather than for a physical need. And lastly, what happens next? In 2026, the Black Parade will be playing South and Central America, Asia, the UK, Europe, and concluding in the US. Of these shows, only 2 locations are titled Long Live the Black Parade, 2 shows in Mexico City and 2 of the 3 shows in London. Previously, every other show was just My Chemical Romance. However, recently the band posted an updated tour photo including every 2026 date, simply titled The Black Parade 2026. Because of this title change, there's definitely speculation about changes to the show or story, no longer working under the Long Live title. However, let's look at our final promo video. It shows us the same main cast we've come to know, even the gentlemen. They mess around with key stage props like the Dagger, letter, and phone, there's wheat, and the Draag curtain, and then they all pose for a photo. Putting them side by side in normal lighting, you can see how much paler Gerard is, and you really get a sense of that hue shift in the white of their costumes. There's a few tiny character moments like the showrunner fussing with Marianne's fur, and the manager staring intensely, probably at the clerk. So this doesn't really tell us much, but it does imply that this show will have the same core structure, or at least that we'll be seeing the same main characters and new pieces will be added to each show. As we saw with Shaky Knees, the band is able to adapt. The setting of the photo shoot is curious though. Paired with another short video of a curtain falling from a balcony, the vibe of a classic theater is very different from the show so far, and absolutely calls to mind a certain other president whose head did not just do that. My bold prediction, party poison. At the last show, he comes out and blasts the dictator and they have a fake head that fucking explodes. But actually, I do think that as the show goes on, they will modify the story and ultimately conclude it. Their 2026 shows also end with the 3 shows in LA at the Hollywood Bowl, a very theatrical looking stage, with one of the shows happening on the 20th anniversary of the Black Parade album. There's no goddamn way something special doesn't happen at those shows. So I would anticipate more of the same for a little while, but I do expect some kind of climactic end to the story, whether it's the death of the dictator and fall of Draag, a way out for the Black Parade, or a more tragic end. Despite covering a lot of ground in this video, I really haven't dived into the meta rabbit hole of all of this, being MCR 5. When I say MCR 5, I mean a new studio album from the band. After Danger Days, they finished and released 10 songs from a scrapped album called Conventional Weapons, and that doesn't count because those were basically songs that didn't survive onto Danger Days. There was a 5th studio album in the works called Paper Kingdom, and we actually have officially heard one song off of it during this tour, called War Beneath the Rain. It was going to be a concept album about a support group of parents who lost their kids and make up a story about them going into the woods to fight a witch. It never came to be because it was immensely dark and depressing, and started out as a response to the negative reactions surrounding Danger Days at the time.
Because of Danger Days not capturing that culture like Black Parade had, it was only natural to retreat back into this really dark thing, you know.
Really?
And then the record that didn't get made was extremely dark. And I said, all right, well, I guess my chem is just super dark. Let's do the super dark, because that's what, you know, that's what people want. That's what we do well. Like, we're on a train right now. It's going to keep going.
The band would literally rather break up. I'm firmly of the mindset that we are never going to get that album. It sounds like they started playing this song solely in tribute to a friend and producer, Doug McKean, who passed away. Maybe they'll break out another Paper Kingdom song at some point, but I expect that to be the extent of it. So, do I think MCR 5 is real and coming out? Well, before we get there, let's go over the connections fans have made between this tour, the original Black Parade, Danger Days, and Foundations of Decay. Typically, to my understanding, MCR lore has gone as follows. Bullets and Three Cheers are about a couple called the Demolition Lovers. Black Parade is an isolated story about the patient, as I've detailed. Danger Days, an album, comic, and supplemental EP, is its own story about the Killjoys versus Better Living Industries in a post-apocalyptic world, and everything else kind of stands alone. Obviously, lyrical themes may intersect, but that's because Gerard is writing all of them, and that's kind of how it works. I've already covered how Long Live reworks the themes of the album into this show, but just to be thorough, let's quickly ask, do any of the characters of the Black Parade appear in the show? Well, especially if we think of the band Black Parade as having made the album, then no, none. At the very start of everything, some believe that the Dictator was the patient way down the line. I don't subscribe to that at all. The only kind of interesting connection is between Mother War and Mary Ann. Beyond their names having similarities, if you do the thing you do at pools by opening and closing your ears a bunch, the core imagery of two dark eyes and a mechanical mouth is shared between the two, and I like that conversion of the imagery, but I do think it's just that. Imagery. I think a lot of aspects of this tour are made to echo the album, but are not actual narrative elements. You have important guy in chair, you have lady in dress with dark eyes and covered mouth, and you have a big emphasis on matching characters or twins.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Beyond the Black Parade band members, I don't see this tour as an extension of the Black Parade storyline. With that said, that's not nearly as talked about as the show's connectivity with other albums. The reason this is a conversation at all is because of Long Live's focus on nuclear war and authoritarianism, as well as in-show props and imagery, heavily relating to Danger Days. There's the wanted posters that perfectly mirror the extermination posters in Danger Days. There is much focus on city, industry, and pollution. There's emphasis on blindness and eyes related to censorship and control. Both authoritarian states heavily control public perception and thought, silencing and murdering any contradiction and dissent. The four prisoners not only mirror the Black Parade, but the Killjoys, and the girl survives. There's verbiage of a parental figure being someone in control or capable of manipulation. Here's a big one. Both involve articles of clothing that, when placed on a person, affect or erase memory and personality and remove the soul from the body. Are the jackets prototypes for the Draculoid masks worn by low-level goons in Danger Days? On a meta level, both stories show a protagonist with a casual relationship to death and violence who is fighting for freedom of emotion and expression. And of course, both are worlds confronted by nuclear war. In Long Live, it is the action of launching the bomb. In Danger Days, there's an implication that nuclear war caused this world to be a Mad Max post-apocalypse, with reference to the Great Fires and Helium Wars in early Danger Days lore and the idea that areas aren't safe to travel in. So maybe they did, in fact, H-bomb Los Angeles. So does it work with the timeline? I couldn't even begin to tell you, because as far as I'm aware, no one has even the slightest goddamn clue what the official timelines are for MCR lore. Danger Days is riddled with inconsistencies and altered lore, and we don't even know who or what the Black Parade is beyond speculation. Even then, I gave you options. MCR lore might as well be a choose your own adventure. Think of MCR lore as less of a story and more of a playground for your imagination. With that creative liberty, here's what I would propose. If the Black Parade is active in the mortal world up to 2008, we see the date 2009 during the failed execution, and the earliest events of Danger Days take place sometime in the late 2010s. Connecting these stories makes perfect sense. The Black Parade lives in an alternate timeline to our reality. They die, Draag clones and reanimates them, and then they blow up the world and Draag falls to ruin. We even see a Black Parade jacket in the ruins of the zones in Na Na Na. If we treat the Dictator like an apathetic figurehead and tool of a higher force, maybe the Secretary intends to use the Dictator's influence to destroy the world and build a new one from the rubble. This could be the start of Blind, as taking over Draag's resources would absolutely provide them with control over industry, entertainment, and agriculture, which Blind has in Danger Days. All we need is a bridge to get us from A to B. Hey, wait a minute. Yes, that is where Swarm comes in. We get our bug imagery throughout the show, and the mark of transition away from the Long Live show is a swarm decomposing the symbol of Draag. The theme song of Swarm being Foundations of Decay, MCR's newest song with maggots, flies, and rats as its icons. Draag's war could be those foundations, allowing the world of Danger Days to grow out of the disarray. And this is where some fans believe MCR 5 will come in. With Foundations of Decay signaling a possible direction the band is interested in, it perfectly fills the void of lore and thematic elements between the full story of the Black Parade and Danger Days. And speaking of MCR themselves, there have been not so subtle hints that this isn't the last MCR tour ever.
For those of you who won't see you tomorrow, we'll see you eventually, I have a feeling.
Wait, you know, he made me think of that song. Because we're in a studio. I'm a computer. Look at me, I'm a computer man.
We have 3? Gotta make 3. What do you think it's gonna be about? He's gonna let me know. You let me know, Frank.
We haven't found a good place for him. I think maybe when we get out of doing just Black Parade on this rig, those will come more into play. We had to take into consideration, like, we're not always going to be doing just Black Parade.
I mean, even Foundations alone is enough of an anomaly to call it into question. They wouldn't release such a thematically dense song as a one-off. Like, they wouldn't. Right? Now, this has been big Tinfoil Ray territory, but we need to have some Mikey in here too. Gerard, along with the rest of the band, but Gerard writes the crazy shit, is an artist. At the end of the day, artists often reuse and re-explore themes and imagery. It's fully possible that Gerard is just a guy who likes certain things.
This is it. The grassy knoll. Getty's about to get shot.
Fighting against authority, doomed missions, death, violence, politics, mind control. These things may just be interests housed throughout various projects, and the same goes for specific iconography. MCR has also never been descriptive in its storytelling. Sometimes vague things are meant to be vague things. Ambiguity is meant to be ambiguity. Again, there's a playground, and we're able to imagine and interpret things however we'd like, and it's all valid, but doesn't hold water when it comes to the facts and realities of the real people in the band. So could I see MCR 5 happening? Sure. The band seems more excited than ever to be together, they're still introducing new material, and they're now able to play shows to a scale they never were before. Gerard has also said that now was the time to do MCR again because...
If I don't do it now, I'm never gonna do it.
But I do not believe we're going to get another album. Why? I simply can't. I can't. Every October, fans tell me something is going to happen, and every October, I'm left with my Dodger dog in my hands. I did this with Silksong. I did it with Metroid Prime 4. I'm basically doing it with Spider-Verse 3. I cannot do this to myself. Maybe we'll get more singles, either from Paper Kingdom or like Foundations. Maybe we'll get a live show movie of Long Live. Hell, maybe we will get MCR 5, but I refuse to hope. No one appreciated this homemade shirt at the show, so now you all have to.
I did that shit because I'm funny.
now that we're done with Fantasyland, let's talk about how the world's going to shit. Actually, despite the subject material, this section will actually be pretty snappy because I have less to talk about than I expected to. As I said, I think a lot of this show rejects direct connection to real-world, real-time politics and figures. This isn't their American Idiot. Instead, it holds tight to the original album's theme of dread and changes its host. Instead of cancer, it's fascism. Fascism is the cancer to this body, the people of the world. I've also already touched on the ideas of dread and gloom as they're presented in the show, but to reiterate, both the album and the show present a situation where the protagonist is fighting the oppressive call to fade into darkness, to give up. It's on the patient to find a meaning in his death and purpose in the beyond, learning from his life. It's on the Black Parade to reject giving up under the hopeless circumstances they're caged in, concluding that fighting is the best possible response at every show. You can consider a lot of what we see as the internal workings of a body. The Black Parade and the Clerk represent a dichotomy of nothing meaning anything, depression, and everything meaning everything, anxiety. The Twins and Auxiliary Band are almost like blood cells carrying out essential functions, and the singers could fit in either as dreams and talent or the feeling of being perceived. The Cancer doesn't care. It is a neutral evil that simply spreads and kills. And of course, what is the goal of fighting cancer? To remove it before it destroys you. We're watching Draag's warpath, but this is not a world that has ended yet. It's on us to reject dread, reject hopelessness, reject choosing to sleep forever. It's going to be hard and there will be loss, but it doesn't matter how you do, it only matters that you do.
We know it's not right, we know it's not funny, but we'll stop beating this dead horse when it stops spitting out money. But until then, we will repeat stuff.
I've lightly touched on this theme throughout the video, and in some ways, I feel that this is the point of the show. I don't think MCR is as political or rebellious as we infer upon them in this show.
We've actually stayed out of politics just because we're not as informed as we'd like to be. And we've always been more interested in how people treat people, really human issues and social issues and things like that.
It's there. It's certainly there, like I just said. But in my heart, I do not believe that the presidential administration or any specific person or group is the target of the criticism of this show. If it was, the Grand Immortal Dictator wouldn't be framed this way, and the stylings of this country would not be this ambiguously retro Eastern design. I believe this is MCR's indictment on the entertainment industry, and in many ways the fans. To be clear from the start, I am not saying that MCR hates the fans or that they hate doing this. This doesn't mean they don't love the material, but this is a band that is acutely aware of its age, the monetary side of the business, and the optics of the two merging. Again, it's so apparent to me that they're having the time of their lives on this tour, and they want to keep going. And I personally hold them in high regard in many ways, as they are one of my biggest creative influences and inspirations. It's like them and Masahiro Sakurai. At the same time, these guys are not paragons. No one in this industry should be an idol. Mistakes get made and silence can speak loudly. While MCR can be political in their messages and act politically, their focus has always been social. And what is the entertainment industry if not the business of society in observing and monetizing the arts?
You know, My Chemical Romance to me was always supposed to be this like experiment, like this, you know, this kind of social movement, experiment, you know, advocacy for mental health.
The band is more interested in how people act, how people treat themselves and one another, the general welfare of people, and how people respond to their work. They have also been extremely sensitive to the health of the band itself. Gerard made clear during the breakup that the biggest reason to flip the kill switch was because there was no passion or fun anymore, and they felt they had done their job. As early as the Black Parade, doubt started to enter the mind of the band, and they kept going for several more years.
So we play MSG, and it felt like the ride out in the sunset, you know? But instead of doing that, I did feel like the touring after MSG was really brutal too. I feel like that kind of put extra nails in the coffin.
This was touring Danger Days.
No, this was touring Black Parade.
Okay.
I had already begun to feel, I had an exchange with Frank backstage at MSG, and I think he had said something to me like, "You're not having any fun, are you?" And I just said, "No, I'm not."
When MCR ended, it was in large part because they had said all they needed to say, had put everything into the music, and had left the headspace necessary to say it.
I didn't feel like fighting anymore, and I felt like it was a disservice to them that I wasn't fighting against something. Not that I lost the fight, I just felt like we all did a really good job. The fans, man, we did a great job.
And yet, even if they felt that to be true, that sentiment was not shared. Fans would tout the band's darker, earlier work as their peak, and the industry would devolve more and more into repetition and shallowness. These two things culminate into the environment that allows Long Live the Black Parade to exist. A shared denial of progress and maturity in all components of the entertainment landscape. It is my belief that the metaphor of this tour is that it is a bad thing to have My Chemical Romance still playing as the Black Parade, and that the tour intends to comment on and demystify its songs. Everything we need to know about this messaging has already existed in My Chem after the Black Parade. Danger Days is an album about hating industry and celebrity.
And so then we made Danger Days, which is actually this response to that in a weird way, which is basically, it's kind of like me saying, yeah, I really hate famous people. But re-engaging with the world, that was scary. So coming out of Black Parade and then being like, having somebody turn to you and say, oh, no, famous people are a big deal now. And like, there's people that are famous for doing absolutely nothing. And you're like, really? When did that happen? Because they used to reward people for having skill or ability.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, you don't need that anymore.
Right.
You just need a sex tape.
The rules changed, yeah.
Lore elements like the analog wars and contracting VMA established the media landscape as a barren, irradiated wasteland run by emotionless drones and drugs. They then saw this issue basically only become worse, and music like theirs be discarded in favor of the algorithm. When the band symbolized their return, it was not some vindictive zombie crawling out from the grave, but being pulled from the afterlife by a retrospective ritual. We see the same thing with the Black Parade now. And the name of this tour itself is part 2 to an acknowledgement of the end of those characters. The Black Parade is dead. Long live the Black Parade. You don't say that phrase when something is alive. It's a satirical use of the phrase because there is no moving on in this context. It's the abuse of a memory, misremembering what made the Black Parade special. And going back even more, throughout the band's life, it has always held the idea of closure and finality in death very dearly. There were always a lot of people afraid that MCR was like a suicide-promoting death cult, and of course they're not, if you dig into the lyrics and what the members themselves say. But okay, if you look at the trajectory of all of their albums, yeah, I can see it. I'm allowed to say that because I'm a lifelong fan and not a frightened parent reading a magazine. In Bullets, the Demolition Lovers are separated by death. In 3 Cheers, the man is damned to hell, unable to reunite with his love. In the Black Parade, the patient dies and fades away in the afterlife. And in Danger Days, the Killjoys die. And not to get too parasocial, but I feel this is because of what Gerard believed for a long time. I believe Gerard thought he and or the band should die young in a blaze of glory.
I got on that plane and I packed real light. I was so addicted to self-destruction, I think more than the drugs. There's something very romantic about it. And I really thought I was gonna die. I thought I wasn't coming back. Honestly, just good old-fashioned depression, but heightened by alcoholic dependency and narcotic abuse.
He clearly outgrew that, thankfully, but he exchanged that with the notion that no system should be allowed to survive if it's corrosive to personhood. Valuing life over all else, it is better to let the machine die before it kills you. I think that this performance of the Black Parade and the added element of Draag serve to satirize the misinformed interpretation of the band's work, and maybe even that past fixation of death. This show is obsessed with death and actually features death for death's sake more than basically anything MCR has done. The Dictator wants nothing more than death. I really wasn't expecting to come out of this show tallying a body count, which I mean, Alice Cooper was there for the assist on that.
First strike. Double kill. Triple kill. Overkill. Kill-tacular.
And the Black Parade themselves are portrayed as a band that worships death and that doesn't have the deep empathy that other MCR roles do. They believe in the message of their album so much that they thought their perfect ending was to die in flames at the end of the tour, and are left directionless when that option isn't available to them anymore. And when you compare them to the man's journey to reunite with his love in 3 Cheers, the unity of the outcasts in I'm Not Okay, the pain and effort to save each other in The Ghost of You, and all the same amplified for the Killjoys, we get a stark contrast. As they wake up more and more, they show a little more concern for each other, but the guitarists are so locked in that they basically have no clue what's going on at the end, and Mikey just runs off. Gerard is left to die. This isn't the end of the band's critique on this version of them, though. They lampoon the effect Welcome to the Black Parade has on a crowd, they mock the dramatic sincerity of cancer, breaking us away from the sad music, and maybe pointing out that we've been watching a guy who has never dealt with this himself act it out. They point out the shallowness of teenagers being on the album, and they show how the back half of the album is basically doom and gloom. That was a little bit of an offshoot. Let's get back to the industry and how it relates to the fans. The Dictator represents the studio higher-ups of the music industry. He could not care less about the creatives and has no personal stake or opinion. He is there to follow the whims of whatever gets him that prized wheat. Wait, is it wheat? Is it wheat like bread, like money? Is it that minimal of an abstraction? Sorry, I literally just realized that while doing this. The clerk represents a middleman, but it's hard to say exactly who. Could be a producer or a fellow creative or something else, or it's someone who has aligned themselves with what the higher-ups want and lost their freedom and voice because of it. Again, he could also serve as an internalized version of Gerard, trying to get the band to do the smart thing. The Prisoners can absolutely be the band from various points in their career, whether it was critics rejecting their work or they themselves confronting parts of themselves. And playing their role perfectly, the fans are the fans. And the show asks us very pointed questions. Will we watch this show as our singer fights through decay and pain? Will we cheer on the reliving and reenacting of their darkest times as they choose to continue to perpetuate it? Will we watch them be critiqued and controlled, either conforming to the modern landscape or suffering the consequences? Let's do some final lyrical analysis. Fake Your Death and Foundations of Decay. Both of these highlight my points perfectly.
Some people hope, some people pay, but why do we have to say?
Bringing up the ways people might try to get MCR to stick around and questioning it.
We like to watch, we like to use, and we were born to lose.
I think this talks about the band's personal struggles brought to the forefront by their success, and that being a band made to be against something means that you can't win forever.
I choose defeat, I walk away, and leave this place the same today.
Expressing that the band ultimately lost in the face of what the entertainment world was becoming, not necessarily in the eyes of the fans.
Look at all that pain.
MCR for the longest time was dictated by the constant excising and expression of their own pain, and almost more so, the acceptance of the turmoil that fans would express to them endlessly.
I can only imagine what it was like playing this avatar that represented a darker time in your life,
right?
When you had already left that time and you were out there going through it, and also, you know, your fans are incredible,
right?
And devoted and dedicated, and they were on different stages of their personal journeys, and the darkness in that record.
What you said right there, that's the best way to describe it. Just different stages of personal journey. That's in the end is like kind of what happened for me and Mike Hem. I was just at a different stage from maybe some fans, maybe some other people in the band. I was just at a different stage as a human, you know. But that's what was going on in Black Parade is we were at just different stages, you know. I was releasing. I was kind of that I had the benefit of that being a release for me every night.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, great success. I've worked it all out.
You want the heart or to be safe, but even good guys still get paid.
I mean, come on, they've been saying it. You can't be a band to this scale and not deal with the financial facts of the situation.
Take off your clothes and dream that fame. Come on and feel that shame.
The brutality of bearing your soul in a superficial industry.
So tired
The end was inevitable, move on, but also don't question the mission or good deeds of the band. The end is not a failure because they leave behind a great legacy. To try to squeeze more for them simply for the sake of more is sadistic. Again, it would be better to fade away than to go against the conviction of the band. I've read this line as isolationist by the narrator, but others read it more as triumphant and successful. I think no matter how you read this line, the message is the same. Nothing stays pure. The infection, whether it be greed or vanity or otherwise, will always be there. Extremely on the nose about the rat race of fame and fortune, and then this breakdown bridge is basically pointed directly at the industry. Against faith, against all life, against change. And then cage all the animals because the message must be pure. You can't let truth and authenticity enter the realm of the product. You can wander through the ruins. We are plagued, but the poison is the cure. You must fix your heart, and you must build an altar where it swells. If the industry is ever to survive, that love of the individual and the message needs to return. You need to honor the heart, especially where things hurt the most. And the band cannot exist from an insincere place. And lastly, to me, this is the band taking up their new mission. It is now about being against what the industry stands for and how it uses art. In Danger Days, it was fame, celebrity, money for money's sake. Now it's apathy, laziness, recycling endlessly, and a lack of support for anything new. And depending on how you look at it, we may also be the victims of this, but we are just as much the perpetrators. Why is everything a remake or a reboot? Why is brand recognition paramount? Why can new artists only break through with a massive following to start? Why is every band doing some kind of retrospective tour? Because we're paying for it. We are the swarm eating the dying carcass. You know what this looks like to me? As I was writing and pondering this script, I was starting to fear ending on such a negative note. It's kind of a bummer to imply that MCR is partly doing this out of spite, and that we won't get anything new from them because they feel it's unwanted. As I thought about it more and more though, searching for that positive ending, I found it. I found the theme that ties together literally everything. Like I said, My Chemical Romance has existed for a few primary reasons that you'd hear often while following the band. The band was cathartic and therapeutic for the members.
It became my therapy. Yeah. You know, from the PTSD that everybody had experienced from 9/11 and how to process that.
They felt they had a higher calling and wanted to save lives.
Keeps us alive.
We're definitely a band that wants to save your life.
MCR saved my life. That's the fucking real point of all this.
And since the beginning, MCR has stood against something and was made to fight something.
And I think My Chemical Romance always existed to kind of combat something or exist
in opposition to
something. And I thought that was the exchange we had with the fans that was really magical. Was that, you know, you believe in us and we will exist despite something.
The thing with this band is it faces adversity, and that's what it does best. That's what it was born out of. When it stops facing adversity, it gets weak. and soft.
They always sought to do something against what their contemporaries were doing. You can find Gerard and the rest of the band talking about music at the time being shallow, poetryless, and lowest common denominator, lacking any storytelling or drama, and that's what they wanted to provide. Then, entering the scene more and more, they started to push to make MCR a safe, inclusive space, constantly defending marginalized people or those made to feel like outcasts of society or the scene. Then their fight expanded even more, becoming outwardly anti-war, speaking about gun violence, and going against conservative movements. When you get to Danger Days, you can see the true crossing of the threshold of what the band is about. Having vanquished a lot of personal demons and completing the initial MCR plan, they took a brashly rock and roll sound in the face of an industry trying to declare rock dead.
And the guitar had been told, another awful piece of advice came from numerous people, was the guitar's dead.
Danger Days fights for authenticity and against the commodification of both the genre and of people as a whole. And in some ways, especially at the time, it felt like they were losing that fight, not connecting as they had hoped and fearing that MCR could only be about pain and negativity.
If you made the record with the intention of, trying to change something or trying to rebel against something, it's a fight. You get questions, but it's a lot of places that you go though, so you start to realize that you're glad you made the record you did, I guess. I'm really proud of Danger Days, and I'm glad it happened. I'm glad there was something that was off the script. It didn't have to do with the plan. That was really cool. I guess more to the point of it, like, if I was going to go off the script and if I was going to keep doing it, I had to do something that I was proud of, be in line with who I was at the time, all that kind of stuff. But it was really dark to get to the bright, it was always really dark. And I don't know that it sustained turning the color up.
That is not to say they thought that the band failed. On the contrary, they felt the band succeeded personally and had nothing more to give. I think they believed it was time for someone else to take up the battle.
If any of you out there want to go start a band, you should do it. Because when we get old and lazy, some of you guys are going to have to eat us alive by starting your own fucking band. This song is called...
Throughout their fight, they saw a lot of things. Their dark, mentally anguished material becoming lifted into legend, their new work reflecting a healthier balance and targeting shallowness be discredited by many, social matters like gender and sexual acceptance, racism, and mental health starting to get better, especially with Obama's presidency, and the industry in which they resided in becoming increasingly greedy and toxic in new forms, furthering itself from the heart of the band.
You just had this machine, and this machine was providing everyone with X amount of whatever, clams or, X amount of dollars or so. Okay, so how do we keep that flow happening? Okay, well,
especially in an industry like the music industry, consistency is the most valuable possible.
Right.
They were faced with diving back into darkness and conforming with the machine or total destruction, and they chose the latter.
I know I was bringing in some pretty dark energy. I was facing mentally a really hard time in my life that I haven't been that depressed since before I started the band.
Wow.
I had hit this point in my life where I was extremely depressed, and it's really obvious to why that happened. I mean, I felt very trapped. I went against what was in line with myself as an artist. I completely went against it, and I think there was a part of me personally that was trying to recapture that Black Parade energy instead of doing what I always knew I should have done, is to never try to recapture, to always move forward. And if that means you gotta walk away from something, do it.
But that destruction came with assurance from millions of fans that MCR had changed or saved their lives. It started dialogues about important topics and created a safe space for expression. Bow out on top and confident in their triumph. Had they never came back, MCR would still have been immortal. And then, just a few years later, what do they see? Regression into conservatism in societies around the world, a president who is evil and also a fucking moron, backtracking on all those same social issues, worsening the danger of the lives of anyone on the outside, and the industry collapsing in on itself from pure greed and laziness, no longer putting faith or support in artists. They didn't come back because they were running out of money or that they were unhappy with what they were doing. It was because they saw we needed some fucking cavalry. This tour is MCR finding their new fight. fighting against regressive culture that places value on repetition, conformity, and reliving the past. Again, in basically everything in the latter part of the band's life, we can see that this is the enemy. And yes, Fake Your Death and Foundations have very apt lyrics, but do you know where we get the first and clearest mission statement about this? Sing. The enemy is sterilization, isolation, commodification, meaninglessness, and anything stopping societal progress. Let's put that into the context of what we've talked about. Draag is a retro dictatorship, and this is what authoritarian states do. Pretty clear, they made the same points in Danger Days. The Grand Immortal Dictator is defined by immortality and leading this fascist regime, in both cases not allowing the natural cycles of life and progress. When Draag talks about progress, what they really mean is number go up. The clerk is most concerned with things staying in line, following the rules, not causing trouble. Anyone questioning maintaining the status quo is gotten rid of. Nearly everything has a duplicate, nothing is allowed to be unique. At the same time, we in reality have a political climate that wants to set us back decades and undo all the progress we've made in caring for each other and sustaining the planet, while reducing the category of people who matter down to essentially white patriotic dickheads and the rich. Politically, we should have kept moving forward, but we've regressed, and fascism is doing everything it can to tie us down and drag us backwards. The becoming of the pain symbolized in Draag is the manifestation of maintaining the old and rejecting the new. And the Black Parade is forced to continue against their wishes. Let's talk about the industry and creative culture again, because there is very much a war going on within the arts. In many ways, I think MyChem wishes the Black Parade wasn't so relevant anymore, because people should have moved on. It's fine to still love their work and think they're the best, I do, but new artists should be meeting those needs too on the same scale MCR reached. The point of MCR fandom isn't to praise how cool and popular they are. The band started out as a bunch of weirdos in VFW halls reaching out to others. Their goal was never to demand the spotlight for the rest of their lives. And of course, there are millions of authentic, hardworking, talented artists out there. But the environment that allowed My Chemical Romance to become what they are is gone. My Chemical Romance's story would not happen today. Culture, industry, and social media wouldn't allow it. And again, are fans blameless? No. As consumers, we've had plenty of years of ignoring problems to sustain personal comfort, mocking any signs of weakness, and choosing the least challenging media we can consume. But it makes me think of a Bo Burnham quote to conclude my Bo shadowing from earlier.
I don't believe we're just dumb people that like dumb shit and this is what we deserve, man. Like, I fucking hate the people making it. I think they are lazy and awful, and how dare you. I eat McDonald's. It's McDonald's job to give me healthier food.
Right.
They know I'm gonna fucking taste it and want more of it all the time. Yeah, it's like, be better to us. Give us anything better.
The industry is not just greedy, it's actively failing us. If you're not putting out the most profitable thing in history, then you need to go on some nostalgia-driven campaign to sell overpriced tickets and limited time merch. Many scenes and subgenres have either died, been co-opted, or stagnated. You're not allowed through the door of the industry unless there's nepotism involved, or you've somehow won the algorithm lottery time and time again and have already built your own fan base for them to profit off of. New artists simply are not being pushed in a way that is allowing new fans to find them. And every element of the craft and promotion of the art is being threatened by AI to strip the soul and humanity from it in an entirely new, disgusting way. And as listeners, any sense of community has been decimated by the vitriol and endless sea of content on social media. We're encouraged to dogpile authenticity and differentness, and will be even further isolated if we don't pledge our time, money, and opinions to these big trending hashtags of of the week. So no, it's not our fault for craving the feeling MCR brings us, and it's not MCR's fault for wanting to leave or wanting to come back. It's the industry, fueled by the political current, making us choose between submitting to these things or staring into oblivion. MCR's Long Live the Black Parade is about fighting against holding onto the past, when what we're holding onto is pain. They are setting out to stand against apathy and a refusal of progress. And in true Black Parade fashion, the characters are not the protagonists. In the album, the protagonist was the patient. In this tour, the protagonist is us, walking away from the show. The very idea of the Dictator should be a thing of the past, and what that represents in our lives is a massive hydra with more heads than we can count. But the themes of the album are the very same themes we need to take to heart now. We need to carry on. We need to keep living and stay dangerous to these threats to our humanity. Maybe that looks like protesting. Maybe that looks like supporting local artists or independent creators. Maybe that just looks like putting on a crazy outfit. I don't know how MyChem will conclude this tour, but I think if that's the message I ultimately took away from it, then they've still proven why I'm proud to call them my favorite band of all time. Thank you so much for watching. This video was a massive undertaking, so I hope you liked it, got something out of it, and that I covered all aspects of this with equal focus. Sorry if you were looking for MCR5 Hopium, but I was more interested in this analysis. As always, I'd like to assert that I'm just one person, and I don't think my takes on this are gospel. I'm not more right than anyone just because I have a microphone and an obsession. And furthermore, besides coming upon stuff naturally, I didn't really look up other people's theories or anything, so maybe I'm just regurgitating what other people agree on already or have said much better than me. I don't know. Let me know your own interpretations if there's anything I missed, or just share your own concert experience. If you're new here, this is not really a norm for me. I usually talk about gaming, and I don't really have other music stuff to talk about besides maybe coming back to this next year. If you're into that, I have a bunch of Smash Bros related videos and other random topics. If you're here because you like MyChem's music though, which, I mean, yeah, I'd hope so. I also happen to be a musician, and I do my own original stuff with 2 different bands. The one you should definitely check out is called Night Fury. We're glam punk with theatrical inspirations. We're putting out new music, and we play shows in and around Philly. We actually just did an MCR cover show. There's me in the corner looking like a locked fighting game character. I also do solo music under Room 100, though if you specifically like MyChem's sound, then wait around a little bit for my next album because it'll be way closer to that energy. If that all sounds cool, drop a like, subscribe, and again, thanks for watching.